How scuffed was that? How scuffed was that? How scuffed was that? How much time have we wasted? We've wasted 5 minutes. That's great. That's great. That's great. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. I've done it again. I need to change the fucking stream that I put in Discord as well, because I put the fucking old one and I've changed it to a fucking new one. So if anyone tries to click on it, they're going to go onto the old one. They're going to think that I'm not live anymore, but I am still live. I've just done it onto a new stream because I had to restart my computer because I'm a fucking idiot and I can hear myself, and now I'm getting double feedback and that's really fucking stupid. No one will know. No one will know. No one will know. Let's just start again with the intro. We're doing a late night stream, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Undeniably Canon Fnaf Part 3 is coming out. It's a series made by Ooftroop. So I thought it'd be good to not just watch it live, but to come on an hour before and just watch through the first 2 episodes, just to bring everyone up to speed, you know, to catch up to date. I tried doing this a few moments ago, and it was really scuffed. There was a lot of problems. So new stream, should all be fixed, should all be good. Yeah, and we have an hour and 4 minutes to watch a 27-minute long episode and a 30-minute episode. So I'm not going to have much time to pause it, so we just need to go with it. It set all of my settings back, so I don't know what was audible and what wasn't. I'm going to assume at -3 decibels, you can still hear this fine. I'm going to assume that my microphone's working fine. I know my microphone's working fine because I had the feedback. I'm going to assume you guys can see the screen fine. I'm going to assume nothing's going to fuck up my day. I'm just going to get on with it. I'm just going to get on with it. What I'm going to do actually, let me do myself a cheat. Aha. Because now I can still mess around with Chrome, but it's not gonna fuck up my day if my desktop appears. So let's go. All is fine in the world.
But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory.
I miss Map Pat.
Hey you. You look like you're interested in some Fnaf lore. Sick of all the speculation? Do you want something that's undeniably canon? Oh. Well, that's too bad. I'm telling you anyway.
Yes, this thing. It was on the screen a second ago.
The year was 1983. January, to be exact. Local nobodies Henry, Emily, and William Afton were walking down the streets of Hurricane, Utah, when suddenly they noticed that not once in their life have they ever caught a glimpse of a yellow grizzly bear. It was then their fates were sealed, and they knew that they must fulfill their destiny.
Funny, I've never seen
Henry
a
and
yellow
William
bear
were
either.
something of robotics enthusiasts, so they finally used their untapped potential to create the most realistic animatronic bear imaginable. On their first attempt,
Yeah.
they made a decrepit, muddy yellow bear with giant teeth and claws. This wasn't
Yeah,
realistic.
I just had...
William, however,
I had to tell my Windows to check for an update, and it was like, oh, there's an update. If you don't install this update, some things might not be working. And I was like, no fucking shit, a thing's not working. You're saying activate Windows. But I realized a lot of things weren't working. My antivirus wasn't working. My internet speed wasn't very good. It had caused quite a few issues, but we fixed it. We can just get on with this now. I'm sorry, I did a KSI, okay? I recorded content with that fucking annoying watermark in the corner.
Remembered that in the trunk of his car rested a cluster of discs that could emit audio frequencies that would fool people into seeing real bears. They slapped those bad boys on this animatronic, and suddenly it took the form of a beautiful golden grizzly, who they then named Ferdinand von Bernard. Not only did he look the part and have a voice like honey butter, but the mind-altering audio accidentally gave him sentience and cosmic power beyond our human understanding.
I'm sorry, what?
This was very dangerous. But the partners in furry shenanigans were not swayed. That is, until the entire town evacuated at the sight of this golden beast. Turns out, people are scared of loose bears. Who would have thunk it? Of course, this fear wasn't for nothing. Ferdinand was caught dining on a local restaurant owner, and he fled from the crime scene before law enforcement could get to him. William and Henry realized they had been a slight bit overzealous with their first creation. Good thing is, literally nobody knew or cared who they were, so they got away with this scot-free. Later that month, they designed an animatronic simply based on Ferdinand's likeness. This character was quite a downgrade, being both simpler and stupider. This didn't matter to the duo, though, as they loved their creation, and with that, Fredbear was born. At first, they had nowhere to actually put him,
I'm
so
gonna
they
snack
opted
while
for the
we're
dog.
watching.
He was truly a diamond in the rough. Amazingly, this attempt at entertainment was amusing enough to the citizens of Hurricane that they gave William and Henry enough money to afford a recently vacated diner space. Fredbear was going to be a star. Unfortunately, this animatronic was extremely poorly designed, and their attempts at granting him artificial intelligence quickly turned sour. On February 31st, 1983, his first performance on stage in front of children prompted him to spontaneously combust from a nervous breakdown. William and Henry, heartbroken at this tragic event, cracked down to ensure this would never happen again. This also prompted William to threaten the United States government, and they met his demands to strike February 31st from the calendar forever. After that, they set their sights on making something with no flaws. But then they made springlock suits. In an attempt to both ease the animatronics' nerves and not allow them their legally required breaks, Henry and William created mechanisms that could lock the endoskeleton parts to the inner edges of the suit for a person to climb inside and cover for the character. For extra safety precautions, they created a partner for the new Fredbear 2.0 to ease his nerves. For some reason, the best name they came up with for Fredbear's partner was Spring Bonnie. William was insistent on this name, and Henry felt too threatened to argue against it. Where the safety precautions ended, however, was the fact that the spring locks holding the endoskeleton pieces away from a person's vital organs were made out of paper clips, and the lightest sneeze could set them off. Truly brilliant inventors, those two. The dynamic duo had now created a dynamic duo. William was the only one who had the nerve to actually test the springlock suit, and it turned out he enjoyed dancing around as a yellow rabbit a little too much. Henry was unbothered by this, though, as William was still perfectly capable of handling their finances in character. A few months had gone by, and Fredbear's Family Diner was an absolute success. Not only were Fredbear and Spring Bonnie beloved by the now enlightened Mormon population of Utah, William even managed to lock in a deal with a low-budget animation studio in order to make a cartoon called Fredbear and Friends. The one downside, though, was the studio needed more characters and they refused any more yellow ones. Out of obligation, Leopold, Theodore, Mirabella, and Foxy were created.
Mirabella is yellow!
No, Mirabella's not yellow. She's Xanthophyll. You're just seeing.
I'm sorry. Wait, did he hear me? Did he hear me? Wait a minute. Fucking wait a minute. I don't remember that.
Things. Surely these blights to everything William and Henry stood for would never see the light of day in any other context. William and Henry were at their peak, and William finally regained custody of his children. However, one of his sons, whose name has been stricken from the record, waltzed into the back room of Fredbear's and saw Fredbear smoking a cigar. Fredbear's blatant nonchalance about his respiratory health was truly traumatizing for the child. In a panic, the child started to run out the door but accidentally tripped over the foot of Spring Bonnie. Unbeknownst to him, the animatronic was being worn by Harold the janitor, and this collision was enough to snap open the flimsy spring locks and impale Harold every which way.
It's nice that Harold has it written on his chest.
Heartbroken by his untimely demise in his boss's backup fursuit, transformed into pure agony, and he became a shadow creature. He gave himself a really cool name, but unfortunately he never learned how to spell, so it came out like this. Shockingly okay with witnessing this occur, the child went home and invited his older brother, Michael,
honestly,
to play a game of Uno with
Dave
him.
looks more
However,
upset than
there was foul
the crying
play.
child is.
This child was actually just a terrible human being and slid extra cards into the deck, causing
That
Michael to
bastard.
draw 8 turns in a row. Enraged, Michael threw on a foxy mask and started screeching at the child. The child, annoyed by his behavior, decided to humor Mike until he got bored of doing this and pretended to sob 24/7. Maybe, just maybe, this would guilt trip him. However, Michael was far more resilient than the child anticipated, and this behavior kept going for a whole week. The child, craving literally anything else to do with his time, walked into Fredbear's again in an attempt to face his fears before getting cornered by Trevor the cashier wearing a Fredbear suit. The child saw the reasoning for this, as Trevor was holding a gnat for a mediocre dentist's office in his hand, and so the child deliberately ran into Trevor to set off the spring locks in his suit. Trevor's spirit,
child is a horrible
relieved by the
person.
matter in all honesty, turned into a more chill shadow creature that just kind of walked around convincing people to join his conga line. The child returned home completely okay with the fact he just killed a man,
He's cool. He's
and
chill.
told his Fredbear plushie everything he did. The next day, Michael and his Uno buddies barged into the child's room.
Something he doesn't mention there, we think that the Fredbear plushies were William Afton's way of spying on him. So that's why immediately afterwards we see William Afton going,
room to take him to Fredbear's for his birthday. The child was still committing to the crying act, but this was a bad idea as it just made them come up with the idea of shoving him in Fredbear's mouth. So, that's exactly what they did. They mockingly told the child to give Fredbear a big kiss, which the animatronic took immediate notice of. This was a very dangerous situation for his career, so without thinking, Fredbear clamped down his jaw on the child's skull.
Was that the bite of
This terrified
87?
Michael and his friends for about 5 seconds, until the child hopped out of it unscathed. Turns out, William and Henry gave the animatronics rubber teeth. Great safety
convenient.
feature. The child was livid and threatened to do the job again. Mike didn't really know what this meant, but it sounded scary enough for his buddy Jeremy Fitzgerald II to knock the child unconscious with a chair. This only distressed Michael more, so he rushed the child to the hospital where he was diagnosed with a mild concussion. When the child awoke, he looked at Michael and told him that he never existed. When Michael asked what that was supposed to mean, the child fused with him and turned a little bit paler. This was just a very bad day for Michael. When he went to tell William about it, William had no clue what he meant by little brother. He told Mike to stop making up stories, trash that disrespectful mask, and take up engineering. This sounded good enough for him, so that's what he did. But, turns out,
Good
the
enough.
employees at Fredbear's called the police because Harold and Trevor's bodies were just laying on the floor, and nobody cared to do anything about it until right then. So, the restaurant was shut down, and the news media blamed it on the bite of 83 in order to abruptly end Fredbear's career. They were just jealous. William and
enough.
Henry were back to
Sorry,
square one.
Fredbear.
Because of the abundant controversy and investigations, they laid low for a couple of years. But in 1985, they finally opened a new location. With the amount of money they had earned from Fredbear's, they were luckily capable of buying out a new restaurant space with ease. Unfortunately, Fredbear was publicly executed 2 years prior. So, William and Henry did the unthinkable. They made animatronics of the cartoon characters they had made out of reluctant necessity. Leopold was their immediate decision for the new mascot, as he was actually a bear. He wasn't golden, but he would do. But that name didn't exactly resonate with the public, so after 5 seconds of brainstorming, they renamed him Freddy Fazbear. The initial plan was for him to be partnered with Spring Bonnie, but William refused to work with any type of grizzly that wasn't golden. So, Henry opted to rebrand Theodore to simply Bonnie, and that worked well enough. However, making these two characters so derivative of their superior counterparts worried Henry and William, as the public could possibly see through their ruse. So, they added another character to the band to
Mild
distract
concussion.
people.
or
Mirabella.
has God mode.
Given the fact that she didn't have overtly feminine characteristics, though, Henry and William renamed her Chica to make sure any Spanish speakers knew she was a girl. There was one
Makes
last
sense.
cartoon character they could use, being Foxy the Pirate.
I love
This was a
Pirate
gimmick
Foxy.
that the Fredbear and Friends show added to drive up ratings. Henry was fine with the concept, but William hated it. For the time being, the partners settled on shoving him in the corner of the building, far away from the three they actually tolerated. After opening the location, however, the two quickly realized that children didn't actually care about the 3 stage performers. Something about theming being more interesting. As more and more children flocked around Foxy's pirate
That's
coat,
on your
William
mom.
immediately ran up and kicked the poor animatronic in the kneecaps. This put him out of order for the time being, and William tore him up after closing to ensure it would stay that way. Somehow this didn't scare anyone away, and everyone just immediately piled back over to watch Freddy sing about bullfighting. Henry and William were truly living the life. They lost their beloved golden animals, sure, but they were still happy. That is, until one fateful day.
Hey, can I borrow $5?
Yeah, sure. Well, not actually this specific day. It was 2 days after this that things fell to pieces. William, after a long day of work, was extremely hungry. You may be wondering why he didn't just eat dinner at Freddy's, but truth be told, he hated the pizza there. They blew all their budget on good tablecloths. So, instead, he opted to drive down to a local rundown Carl's Jr. on that fateful, rainy Tuesday night. Hello, I'd like an original Angus burger and a large Coca-Cola.
That'll be $5, please.
This was the moment that William Afton snapped. Where are my $5? In a fit of rage, William sped 1 mile over the speed limit and pulled up at Freddy's to enact revenge on Henry. However, by pure chance, Henry's daughter Charlie was locked out of the building. William, attempting to help her back in, looked at her in the eyes trying to explain his plight. However, with the rage in his heart at that very moment, his mere stare was a death sentence. Charlie flopped over immediately from this. William, panicking over this murder, threw her in the alley next to the restaurant and drove off before anyone could see what had happened. After this, the restaurant security puppet, designed to keep track of the children assigned to it, walked out of the building to find Charlie.
Yeah,
When
this
he got
is
to
an
her
edging
body,
guide.
Her soul grew an attachment to
This
the
is
character,
this is
and she stuck
this is
around
the
in hopes a new
undeniable
body would be
Fnaf
made
timeline.
so she could fuse with it.
Episode
You'd
3 is
expect for
coming
this to
out,
be
so we're
the
just
end,
watching
but
episodes
the
1 and
sudden
2 to catch
realization
up
of
on
his
the
true
lore.
power gave William an idea. With his instantaneous death stare, he could quickly and quietly send a horrible message to Henry. He circled back around to Freddy's and made a beeline toward the safe room that contained the retired Springlock suits. He quickly equipped his spring bodysuit and darted around the restaurant telling kids that their dead dogs were alive in the safe room with Old Man Jenkins. None of them actually had dogs, but they all assumed that they'd managed to get a free one anyway. Of course, they realized very quickly that they were conned. William waltzed into the safe room with 5 total children inside, but before he could do anything, the child named Cassidy kicked him in the shins so hard it knocked the pink out of him. Luckily, he duct-taped the spring locks to the edges of his
that's
suit
lucky.
so they couldn't go off.
Thank
But
God you
he
can
was
duct
still
tape
made
people
livid
to
by this
bullets.
attempt on his life, so he stared down each one and took them out. William wondered if perhaps he had gone overboard with his evil deeds, but figured that 5 children for $5 was a reasonable trade-off. As a disclaimer to all of you at home, murder is bad. Meanwhile,
Murder
a
is
drunk
bad,
man
guys.
named
Remember
Dave
that.
Miller
Murder is
had just
bad.
been turned away from juniors and drove home. He was a terrible father and insisted on invading his son's privacy for the heinous act of the boy locking his door. The boy, whose name was Andrew, broke his window and left the house. Turns out, Trevor the cashier, at this point dubbing himself Shadow Freddy, convinced Andrew to participate in his conga line to Freddy's. Unfortunately, Shadow Freddy's favorite spot to wrap up his conga lines was the safe room, and the two just so happened to come in as William finished stuffing 4 of the children into the animatronic suits. William, surprised by his sudden extra child, accidentally gave him the death stare, and now he was left with an extra body to stuff.
Whoopsie.
And to make things more inconvenient, there weren't any more characters to pick from. This, however, is when he realized that he could just stuff both Cassidy and Andrew into the Fredbear suit. William knew nobody actually wore the thing, so he was certain it would go completely unnoticed. After this, he left the building
These
like
are some
nothing
big
happened
suits if
and
you
drove
can fit
home
2
to sleep in
children
his
in
safe
them.
and comfy spring bonnie pajama suit. It was getting to be an obsession.
Yeah, I
After
think
this
it's a
point,
furry.
Henry was very obviously devastated. However, he had no idea who actually did it. The cameras were broken, and the only accusations were that someone did it while in a mascot costume. Police promptly arrested a man from a completely unrelated pizzeria. Fortunately, Freddy's didn't get shut down for this, and Henry attempted to keep things going for a while. William had sent him a letter saying he was off on vacation for the time being, so Henry was left to handle finances on his lonesome.
Oh, yikes.
But, people rapidly started losing interest at Freddy's. The animatronics smelled horrible, and everyone finally noticed just how bad the pizza tasted. So, by year's end, the restaurant shut down.
I like the
Henry
idea that
decided
the
to take a
merch
break
was
from
so
it
bad
all.
it didn't
When
even
William
spell the
returned
character
from
names
vacation,
right.
he realized he could seize this opportunity and make a pizzeria with complete creative control. His daughter, Elizabeth, served as the perfect muse, and he proceeded to make an animatronic that looked nothing like her. He named it Circus Baby. Don't ask why, it's not elaborated on. However, after telling Elizabeth all about this animatronic,
Sucks.
he suddenly got the idea to use Baby for a different purpose
I think he's
than simple
dyslexic.
entertainment.
Maybe that's why
William
it
had
misspelled
recently
one.
noticed the animatronics from the closed Freddy's location acting
Dave was in
strange,
charge of
and
the
upon
merch.
further investigation, he discovered a substance that he called Remnant. His new idea entailed having Baby and a new set of animatronics
Hashtag
themed
Pop
after
Goes
her
did
work
nothing
together
wrong.
in order to collect more Remnant from children. So, he made Funtime Freddy and Bon Bon for easy marketing appeal. Then, he finally remade Foxy in his own vision,
I just
stripping
realised
all of
people
that
can't
filthy
hear me
pirate
very well
gimmick
unless
from
I
him
talk
and
really
making him
loud.
a lovely coat of white and pink. Funtime Foxy was superior in every way, and his lack of originality meant that nobody would prefer her over the
There you
characters
go.
William
Now I can
actually
talk and
wanted
I'm
people to
alright.
like.
I'm here with it.
Finally, William made a character named Ballora. This one wasn't made for murder purposes so much as it was made out of contempt. For who? His ex-wife, Eleanor Schmidt. He craved to make an animatronic that was better at ballet than her. She was an accountant, so this was easy. However, upon coming to William's house to pick up Elizabeth for a week, Eleanor saw what he was building. Angered by the fact that this character was better at ballet than her, a woman who never once thought about it until right then, she fused with Ballora in a fit of rage, and now William was stuck with a robot wife that danced around his workshop every day. But, no matter. William secured a building to
At least
open
you
his
can
brand new
dance now.
sister location of Freddy's, named Circus Baby's Pizza World, and progress was going smoothly.
Yep,
He had
Gay
some
Foxy
test
is
runs
coming,
of the
guys.
pizzeria, and let some groups of people come there early
Circus
for birthday
Baby looks
parties. But this
huge.
plan quickly turned sour as Elizabeth joined a party and ignored his specific demands not to see Baby. To William's surprise, children don't listen to you if you say not to play with something they want. As a result, Baby's murder equipment activated as soon as Elizabeth was alone with her. William instantly shut down development on the restaurant. He was very distraught over this, which maybe he should have considered before trying to murder more children. Despite the local population being completely confused by this sudden turn of events, William blamed it on gas leak and never spoke of it, and instead went back to Henry for them to start work on a new Freddy's location. For a while, they planned on just fixing up the old animatronics from the previous location and scrubbing them down to fix the odor problem. However, William caught sight of
Why not
Foxy
rip
and
the
formed
bodies
a
out
new
of
idea
them?
in his head out of pure hatred. He told Henry his idea for the new design philosophy of the animatronics he had in mind. He introduced a newfangled plastic finish, flashy makeup, and to top it all off, William unleashed his newfound obsession with prefixes and dubbed them toy animatronics. In order to further justify this decision, he also proposed bringing back the security puppet character as just a normal marionette, and finally created the hero of this universe, Balloon Boy. Getting all of that out of the way, William went straight to explaining to Henry why Foxy needed to be white and pink. And with that, the new face of Freddy's was underway. The location opened in 1987 with a lot of good press, and people were flocking to it. Why did they put so much trust in this new location? Simple. Henry and William advertised that there would no longer be terrible pizza. This is because they got rid of the kitchen. This restaurant had no food. You'd think this would be a problem, but kids really like to go there for the characters alone. And by characters, I mean character. As even despite William's every last effort of making Foxy relevant, the kids now flocked to Toy Foxy's Kids Cove to tear him apart and put her back together. They thought they could make him
Foxy,
look
the
better, but
animatronic
without
Lego
technical
set.
experience, she looked less like a pirate and more like a metal tumble.
Lego should
William
make
had
an
now found a
animatronic
new
with like
rage
the
spurred by
Mindstorms
Foxy's mere
pieces.
existence, and so he enacted a second missing children's incident to cripple the restaurant's success.
What have you
This
missed?
time, however,
Fredbear was executed for crimes. Another Fredbear was arrested. I think that was one that was executed, actually. Yeah, one Fredbear ran away. Another Fredbear was arrested and executed for murders that he didn't actually do. William Afton has a death stare, so he gives people and kills them like he's fucking Homelander. So he murdered a bunch of kids as well as Henry's daughter. He made Sister Location. Sister Location failed when Circus Baby murdered his daughter. And Gay Foxy has been violated. That's pretty much everything that's happened in the last 17 minutes.
Henry had been paying attention. He saw the camera recordings of Spring Bonnie luring children to the safe room and realized that William was behind this the entire
Check this
time.
out.
He immediately fired William and told him to never show his face again. William realized that this was a big problem. Henry may have let him off easy by not calling the authorities, but if anyone else checked anything, he'd be caught for sure. So, after ruffling through old newspapers about his murders to see if he liked any of the parents' names, he stole the name Dave Miller and applied for a job as a night guard at the location.
Yeah!
Using this position, he tampered with the facial recognition
Okay,
scanners
thanks,
they
I'm a sub.
implemented in the
W,
animatronics
man.
and
You're
wiped
W,
the
Aiden.
camera recordings clean. On top of this, he beat up all of the old animatronics just to put them in their place after seeing Freddy walk around. He even tore off Bonnie's face for not being deserving of the mantle he once bore.
Freddy, are you walking around?
Bonnie, possessed by Lil Jeremy Fitzgerald, was merely a prophecy of more face trauma to come for that bloodline. After getting done with that, William could have sworn he saw the puppet floating around whispering to everything it could see. This made him wonder if this was actually Charlie, but he didn't care enough to check, so he left it alone. The new set of children, though? William hadn't bothered actually stuffing them anywhere, so the puppet guided them to select new vessels of their own. Instead of individual characters like it was expecting, though, all of them voluntarily possessed Balloon Boy just because it was mildly amusing. William, still
That's fair,
presenting as
that's fair.
Dave, tried to maintain a
I get
job as
that.
a day shift guard after this, but was quickly fired for having bad vibes. Also, he kept going into the parts and service room to kick the old Foxy animatronic in the shins. Now that the night guard position was
Hashtag
open,
Foxy did
one of
nothing
Michael
wrong.
Afton's old Uno buddies applied for the job, Jeremy Fitzgerald II. He was actually pretty decent at it, but it got extremely stressful because Balloon Boy staged a coup against him with the other animatronics. So, once the week was over, he transferred over to the day shift position. Balloon Boy wasn't going to let Jeremy get away free though, and proceeded to publicly attack him and bite out his frontal lobe. Wow. That face trauma prophecy came true quickly. But hey, don't worry, it grew back within a month. But this incident, dubbed the Bite of 87, was enough to finally get the establishment closed. On the night after this attack, they needed a guard to make sure Balloon Boy didn't escape. Instead of behaving though, local menace Fritz Smith tampered with all the animatronics and made them extremely aggressive just because he thought it'd be funny. Company higher-ups didn't appreciate this and quickly took care of the problem. Thus, 1987 ended with another location shut down abruptly. Henry scrapped all the toy animatronics after this except for Toy Freddy and the puppet. Turns out Toy Freddy was already retiring, as he really wanted to become a gamer. His endeavors were successful and he led a happy life. The puppet, meanwhile, just
Everyone go
vanished.
Freddy.
Henry, spooked by
Everyone
the
go
idea
follow toy_Freddy on Twitch.
the sock monkey with a clown mask coming back to haunt him, started making blueprints for a counterattack if that day ever came. Now, Henry had his sights set on repairing and reusing the old animatronics for one last attempt at the pizzeria business without William in his way. However, this plan was easier said than done. Henry, with all of his financial incompetence, had next to no funds to enact this idea, so he briefly attempted a public fund to try and get money. After a day of trying, he gave up with exactly $0 earned. Henry was broke, sure, but he had some powerful resolve. So, he decided to steal back the building he and William used in 1985 to recycle for his new pizzeria. Despite this being very much illegal, nobody actually wanted to use the building given its history, so the city decided not to bother Henry when he claimed it back as his. Being a one-man show, Henry had to take his sweet time renovating the place.
Fifth time
But
is a charm,
after
you're
about
right.
a year, he managed to open it back up with somewhat new animatronics, and, to his surprise, he was actually moderately successful. Due to a dwindling bear population in Utah, there was growing demand to see one in person, and the populace reluctantly decided that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was their best shot at doing so. Unfortunately, the working conditions were very much terrible. The most loyal employee of Fazbear Entertainment, only known by his co-workers as Phone Guy, was assassinated by the animatronics during his final week of working the night shift due to looking suspiciously purple.
Fun fact. There's a book that came out during the 10th anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's, which is like, it's like the old Club Penguin books, where it's like, you know, you get a little bit of a story, and then it's like, you have two options, go left, page 47, go right, page 92, like that. In that book, we're pretty sure we know what his real name is now. I can't remember what it is. I'll make a video talking about the video, which pointed this out to me later, but we think we know what Purple Guy's name is now, so that's cool.
The good thing is, he had recorded a helpful guide on how to not get assassinated right before getting assassinated. Henry was not ready to let this casualty of his negligence ruin things for him though, so he covered up Phone Guy's death and business went as usual afterward. William, still being unemployed and bored, decided now was a good time to take revenge on Henry. Again, he realized that he still had an entire stockpile of animatronics he never got to use. With the power of legal loopholes, he managed to kickstart Circus Baby's entertainment and rentals. For suspiciously low prices, the average family
know his
had a
name.
giant chrome animatronic shipped to their doorstep to throw parties for their children. What could go wrong? Well, Baby's eyes were green. For a moment, William thought he just misremembered her eye color, but then she started talking to him about very personal matters, and he realized Elizabeth had possessed her. Instead of doing anything immediate to solve this problem, he locked her in the rental facility and wrote a note
If William
on the
got
fridge to
therapy,
take
none of
care
this
it
would have
later.
happened.
After
You're right,
a few
you're
more
right.
years, Michael Afton finally graduated engineering school and came back home. William was delighted by his son's return, as he was conveniently useful for his newest plot against Henry. However, he wanted Michael to be fully prepared for what was to come, so William locked Mike into a crude replica of their house that vaguely resembled the layout of Freddy's. In this fake house, William had prepared makeshift animatronics with dangerously high safety hazards to attack Michael, so he could learn how to defend himself against the real deal. After roughly a week of watching Mike handle the process, William noticed something went wrong. Something broke into the fake house. Upon further investigation, he discovered some discarded audio discs lying on the ground. It was Ferdinand von Bernard! Having wandered the wilds of
The one that
Utah
ran
for
away.
exactly a decade, he returned to Hurricane to wreak havoc on his creators. So, he targeted William's favorite, only, son using his unaltered form. But Mike was resilient, and he managed to avoid Ferdinand long enough that he got bored, reapplied his audio discs, and finally wandered away. Given the unplanned attack on Michael, William ended the testing process and gaslit Mike into believing it was all just a nightmare before changing the subject to getting a job. To ensure that Henry wouldn't tell Michael what he knows about his
We love
father,
it.
William told Mike that he should apply using his mother's maiden name rather than Afton. That way he doesn't draw attention to himself for being related to everyone's favorite former manager, of course. So,
Makes
Mike
sense.
Schmidt worked for a whole week at this place. The animatronics tried to assassinate him due to his good looks, or so he assumed. After working an extra night and being applauded by Henry, he was then instructed by William to sabotage the animatronics using his new engineering skills. Why do I need to disable their AI? It builds character, and Henry still owes me $5. Michael wasn't buying this, so he decided to do the exact opposite and crank them all up to the maximum setting to challenge himself for the end of his week. But due to the animatronic scent rubbing off on him, Henry fired him for body odor and inadvertently caused a personal grudge. Before leaving, Mike snuck into the back and disabled all of the animatronic systems.
Bonnie's staring at
Now
him.
that the animatronics didn't work,
Bonnie was
everyone
giving him
stopped
some
caring about
bombastic
Freddy's again.
side-eye.
Henry's profits plummeted, and he was ultimately forced to shut the place down by the end of 1993. After hearing this news, William was ecstatic. He began marketing the Circus Baby rental service even harder, and proceeded to begin his final plan. William had needed Freddy's closed for more reasons than just spite. The Fun Times Remnant collection was not working as frequently as he hoped, and if he wanted to understand the substance at all, he needed more of it quickly. So,
I like the idea that there's a lever he's gonna use to pump the remnant
harvest
out
their
the
remnant and
animatronic.
leave. After sneaking into the now abandoned Freddy's, he set up camp in the safe room since the animatronics were programmed not to go in there. But then he remembered Michael had completely deactivated them, and they would only move if the souls possessing them were motivated enough to. Luckily, Shadow Freddy suddenly appeared, and William bribed him to start a conga line leading into the safe room so he could dismantle all the animatronics.
What's Shadow Freddy
His
gonna
plan
do with
worked
$20?
flawlessly. In the animatronics' weakened state, William was able to tear them apart using nothing but his bare hands. Unfortunately for him, some of the remnants
What was
spilled
built?
and formed into the visible spirits of the missing children. Terrified that they might be able to kick him in the shins, he ran to his
Not the
trusted spring
shins.
bodysuit and put it back on for the first time since 1987. Feeling
Damn.
empowered despite this accomplishing nothing, William began to laugh at the ghosts. But, in his self-indulgent celebration, he failed to realize that the duct tape holding back the spring locks had fallen off, and the leaky ceiling proceeded to snap them shut. The ghosts, finding his inconvenience hilarious, faded away for the time being so they could gossip about him elsewhere. While normally being impaled like this would result in immediate death, the spring lock failures these suits cause are painful enough to consistently cause so much agony that life is maintained in some way. While Harold the janitor got the short end of the stick and became a miserable shadow creature, William was now one with his beloved rabbit suit. Realizing he wasn't gonna properly die anytime soon, William Afton came
Yep.
up with a new name
You are
for
kind
his
of
new
immortal.
form. He called himself Springtrap. And with that, we end this chapter of the timeline.
Okay, there's a couple minutes here where it's just like a little bit of exposition with the background.
But pretend it's
character.
only for suspense. But what about...
Yeah, but Dark Springtrap Funko Pop, that was an exclusive. That's the Happy Frog Funko Pop from Fnaf, and I can't remember your fucking name. That's just fucking Squidward. I don't know what that is, but that is absolutely horrible, and that's just a McFarlane figure, and that is the guy that I got right behind me. We don't have a lot of time to spend watching these end bits, and we don't have a lot of time to spend pausing between every second.
Hello again.
Because we need to get straight into the next episode, because we have 34 minutes until this one comes out. And this is 30 minutes long, so we've got roughly 4 minutes spare. So we really can't like pause every few minutes to quickly talk about something. So really quick talk, and then we're gonna get back into it. What's your opinion that the books are canon? They both are and aren't. The way that I see it is, for books, the stories in the books aren't canon, but there's elements that are canon, and I'm pretty sure that's how Scott's described it before. The books themselves are like a separate timeline. So we've got like the game universe timeline, and then we've got the book universe timeline. Stop talking, you balding fuck. Alright, I'll quickly get into this. But the books, think of it as there's two separate universes. Our game universe, our book universe, and another book universe. That's my view on it. But there's things in the books that are canon. Like, the books told us that Purple Guy's name is William Afton. That was not confirmed until Sister Location. The books also tell us that he went by the fake name Dave Miller at one point. You know, these things, these small elements from the books are canon to the game. But the books as a whole are not canon to the games. That's my understanding of it. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm sorry if it doesn't. I can't spend much more time talking about it. I'm going to skip through the intro. I'm really sorry, Ooftroop. I know you work hard on these. But we're going to get straight back into it. Part 2.
We return to the year 1993. William Afton, sitting in the safe room of the abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, finally got done writhing in pain from his spring lock failure. He thought about reintegrating himself back into society, but before he could make a decision on that front, the ghosts of the missing children reappeared before him. Instead of attacking him though, it seemed they had called it even to ask for a favor. They were very bored, and realized that Springtrap was probably able to figure out how to convert a camera monitor into a TV. Springtrap agreed to do this for them, given he was just as bored as they were. Unfortunately, there was no practical way to get any real channels set up with the materials they had, so everyone had to settle with watching the same 3 VHS tapes of Seinfeld episodes.
Aww.
As time went on elsewhere in Hurricane,
You
Henry and
poor
Emily
guys.
began to grow restless. It had been at least a week since he had shut down Freddy's, and he already tanked his finances within that time. So, Henry looked for another option. The city permanently banned him from opening a new business, but they never said anything about running an existing one. He immediately ran to the Afton household to beg William for a manager's position at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals. When he got there, however, Michael Afton opened the door.
You fired me.
I also fired your father. Where is he?
He said something about vandalizing your house. Hasn't come back since. Now leave.
Out of options, Henry decided he'd try to sue Afton Robotics to claim the rights to the rental business. To his surprise, this actually went smoothly. The only person William had left to handle something like this was rather eager to have a boss again. So, he willingly let Henry win the case to absorb the company into Fazbear Entertainment. Despite this success, Henry was still worried that William might come back and ruin things for him, so he decided to take measures to ensure that he couldn't. After checking his house and seeing that nothing was vandalized, Henry's next idea was to check the abandoned Freddy's location. Knowing William, it was very likely that the place was broken into for nefarious purposes. With that in mind, Henry barged into the building and followed the trail of Seinfeld sounds until he found Springtrap. Unfazed by his old friend being a corpse rabbit now, Henry fully explained that he seized control of Afton Robotics and was capitalizing off of William's work.
So I'm going to really quickly answer this comment because we don't have a lot of time. We have literally 2 minutes spare. In one of the books in the circus, they talk about how all of them had killing devices, all of them different in sister location. In the blueprints, it has them. Yeah, in sister location, that's a similarity. In the books, I'm not sure what the purpose of the killing devices was. I think it was just to kill for the sake of killing. But in sister location, it was so that the children could be captured and kept inside the suit so that they could bring them back to William Afton, who would then extract the remnant from them in an attempt to bring back a dead body or experiment with a dead body. We don't quite know, but it's one of the two. Sorry, I really can't talk about that long. But yeah, that's a perfect example of something that's similar but different in the books and the games. And that's what I mean. Some elements are similar, some elements are canon to the games, and then just the story as a whole is just very different. It's just another reinterpretation of Five Nights at Freddy's.
This made Springtrap livid, and the two started to settle things the old-fashioned way. Henry, being much more nimble than the walking corpse, managed to grab Foxy's dismembered leg and bash Springtrap in the shins before knocking him out. Fearing the possibility that Springtrap would try to sue Henry back, he took this
Fucking
opportunity
swing
to throw him into the
at
safe
his
room
head.
and board it up. Now, there was no way William could retake his own company.
Did you at least
Henry's
leave the
confidence had
Einfeld
never been
tapes in there?
stronger,
You know how
so
bored
he
he's
raced
gonna
back
be.
into his new office to try and figure out why he couldn't break a 50 properly. What he didn't realize was
Yep,
that one of
Nightbot
the
is my bot.
animatronics, Ballora,
That's fine.
had snuck
That
up
one's
behind
allowed.
him to figure out what the sound of failure was all about. Fed up with
That
Henry's
just reminds
incompetence,
people to
Ballora
go
pushed
to a
him out
link
of his
to
chair
give
to
him money,
manage
basically.
finances herself. Henry realized what a great convenience this was, so he left her to it and went off to inspect the other animatronics. Turns out, he
Yeah, I'm
hated them,
sponsored by
with everyone
Poggers,
running
so
around
that bot
violently
just
while
reminds
Baby rambled
people,
on
hey,
about
go
the
to
different
Poggers
equipment
and
in
use
the
code
facility.
Davey.
Henry realized he
So
would
no,
not
that
be able
bot's
to
fine.
put up with the animatronics having this much freedom. As a result, he implemented remote-controlled shock collars on all of them to get them to leave him alone. Except Ballora, she was too intimidating for him. The others weren't going to tolerate this, so
Plus,
Baby hatched a
Ballora's
plan to
doing
get
its
them all out of
taxes.
there.
I know these
Although
three are
she
just
had a
lounging
direct
around
line of
doing
contact
nothing,
with
but
Funtime
at least
Freddy and
Ballora's
Foxy,
working.
They needed to break into Henry's office to
She's
get
earned
the
her
door.
freedom.
Right as they were about to bash the door in, Ballora stormed out, as she had just discovered Henry wasn't going to pay her. Suddenly, something clicked in Baby's memory. Last time she had seen something like this was when her mother, Eleanor Schmidt,
Is that
found
Saul
out she'd
Goodman?
have to pay child support for William. Clearly, this was the same person. Although Ballora initially wasn't interested in listening to anyone, Baby used her #1 strategy to get her mother to do anything.
Hey, dummy. I bet you can't help us escape.
Ballora, now adequately motivated to prove Baby wrong, immediately led the charge to the elevator. Unfortunately, they were all far too big to fit inside, and Henry managed to catch them all before they could figure out a solution. After this incident, he decided to fire Ballora as a financial advisor and sacrificed an employee to get a shock collar on her. Now that he was down an engineer, Henry decided to open up job applications for someone to replace him. To ensure that people would actually know about this, Henry made a commercial to advertise the employment opportunity to only the most valuable TV channels. This proceeded to interrupt Michael Afton's 3:27 a.m. viewing of his favorite soap opera. Seeing Henry
Specifically
advertising his father's
3:27.
business confused and irritated Michael, so he went to the kitchen to wait out the advertisement. As he stood there, though, Mike noticed a note on the fridge William had left before his disappearance. This was when he learned the truth of what happened to his sister, something he never actually thought about until right then. After several weeks of isolation, Michael had become rather delusional, so he interpreted this note as a direct request from William. Now, with proper motivation and a desire to please his father, wherever
Matt
he
Pat
may
retired,
be,
now he's
Michael
the
took
next
it upon
Joe. Yeah,
himself
this guy's
to
gonna
get a
take
deadly
over
job
Matt
once
Pat's
more.
place.
To ensure
No,
that
I
Henry
know who I
actually
think
let
is gonna
him
be the
land
next
job,
Matt Pat,
Michael
but I'll
made
show
a
them
point
off
to
at the
bring
end of
deodorant
this.
with him so it wouldn't be a problem this time. When this still didn't convince him, Michael just threatened to deactivate the animatronics again, and that was enough to scare Henry into accepting him. Meanwhile, the Funtime animatronics began growing restless. Bitter that William Afton had apparently left them to be stuck under Henry's management, they began holding it against him and agreed to take revenge if he ever came back. Once Michael had arrived at the facility on his first night, Baby took immediate notice that he looked similar enough to William that it was probably the same person. After thinking about how to take advantage of the situation, she hatched an elaborate scheme to both
Now, this is a
escape
goofy
and
ass game
greatly
plan.
inconvenience William. Ballora, of course, was completely on board with his plan. Any effort to spite her ex-husband was worthwhile in her eyes, so there was no issue there. Funtime Foxy was very motivated to assist in this plan as well, likely due to an instinctive knowledge that he only existed to be inferior to the other animatronics. Lastly, Funtime Freddy agreed to the plan not out of an existing grudge or anything, but just because it sounded like a pretty fun time.
He was just
The next
bored.
night, with everyone in position, the mission was underway. First, Baby sent out her biddy babs to figure out how tall William was. Instead, they just wanted to chew on him, so she intervened and helped him hide under the desk until they got bored. When that didn't work, Funtime Freddy got out one of his spare hand puppets to chew on the wiring until it caused a power outage. Then, as William crawled through Ballora Gallery to get to the electric room, Ballora would taunt him with her masterful ballet routine and vague hints at her past frustrations with him. As this flew over his head, she gave up and let Funtime Freddy take over. Unfortunately, Bon Bon was programmed to gaslight Freddy at a moment's notice. As a result, Freddy was powerless to stop William from rebooting the power generator, and he got away once again. The next day, Baby framed Freddy for a robbery that some technicians were talking about that morning. So, he was deactivated for psychological repairs, while Bon Bon tried to attack William alone. Given Bon Bon was incredibly small, this strategy was fruitless. However, the animatronics finally had a moment of success, as Funtime Foxy jumped William and helped Baby stuff him into a prototype Springlock suit. She was pretty sure it would guilt-trip William, but it seemed to have no significance to him. Despite how absurdly risky this was, it was the only way to keep him still until they could scope out his measurements. After an entire day of nobody noticing anything wrong, Ballora deliberately acted out so she could smuggle her mini Renas to the scooping room. After Ballora's stomach cavity was opened by the scooper, the mini Renas crawled out and began measuring William's height. For reasons they weren't clued
This was
in
a pretty
on,
good plan
they also
so
needed
far.
to crawl down his throat and measure his insides as well. As he frantically kept the spring locks from snapping, they got all their work done and gave Baby the go-ahead to let him out. On the final day of their plan, Baby and Foxy gathered the endoskeletons of Freddy and Ballora and piled them into the scooping room. Once that was done,
Bonnie died
they got a
fighting
spare
Chica, Chica
endoskeleton
died
nicknamed
eating
Yendo
Freddy.
to scoop them and fuse them all together.
Oh, sorry. Bonnie
Sure,
died
he'd get left
fighting,
behind, but
Chica
Yendo
died
didn't really
eating,
have issues
Freddy
with the
died
management of the
hiding,
facility,
Foxy died
so
running.
he was fine staying.
Yeah, I remember
After
that.
perfectly aligning their body with the measurements they gathered,
then that
he
links
used
to the
some of their
animatronic
leftover pieces
behaviorist
to make dummies that would both look like terrifying casualties, and trick the hand unit system into thinking every animatronic was in their proper place. Although the new Funtime amalgamation didn't really need a name, they thought it'd be fun to come up with one anyway. Their best idea was a pun, so they stuck with that and called themselves Ennard. So, that night, Ennard placed Baby Shell onto the parts and service conveyor belt and waited for
keep up the
William to
good
show
videos.
up.
I love to start
Once he
stream.
did,
I appreciate
Baby started
that, man.
throwing herself a
If it's
pity
not
party
obvious,
and
these
told William
videos are
to
not
help
mine.
her
I am not the
needed to
creator
follow
of the
her
Undeniably
instructions
Canon Fnaf
exactly.
timeline. It's not me.
Everything was finally
But
going
a
smoothly.
lot of what we do is
But
just
this
we
was
sit
never
here
William.
talking,
This
watching
was
stuff,
Michael,
or playing
and
stuff.
Michael had a bit of a problem with taking
My goal was
orders
just
at
to
this
create a
point.
nice
So
environment
when
that
Baby
everyone
started
can be
giving
in.
him
So I'm glad
directions
you
to the
enjoyed it,
scooping
man.
room, he just went the exact opposite way. This led him to Henry's private room, which William previously used for most of his remnant research, nightmare chamber monitoring, and early forms of online mischief. Henry was very displeased with this turn of events, thinking William was doing this just to mess with them. After an unnecessary detour to grab a silly mask, they snuck into the back area of the private room. Once inside, Ennard started making it very obvious who they thought Michael was. Mike, relieved that this was all just a big misunderstanding, explained that he was just William's son. Ennard, now reconsidering their initial plan, asked if there was any way for them to still be free from Henry's terrible management. Without a second thought, Mike snuck them home with him, and the semi-reunited family lived a long, happy life. Everything was finally going smoothly.
Oh, I think I preferred that time.
He assumed that this was William. Michael still followed Baby's commands exactly as she instructed.
Hey, you want to be free?
Although
Sure,
he
here's
was
a
getting
fake
tired of
mustache.
this,
Just
he
wear
was
this in my
desperate to
coat.
finally
You got
free his
this.
sister. When he arrived at the scooping room, Ennard explained their true goal. They wanted to look just like Michael. Mike, not really getting the hint, assumed he was being complimented for his good looks and began writing an autograph. While Mike was occupied, Ennard activated the scooper and started evacuating Michael's organs and skeleton before crawling inside his skin. Once this was done, they immediately waltzed out the elevator and stole Mike's rightfully earned employee bonus before scarfing it down in one bite. Getting back to Michael's house, Ennard realized they had nothing to really do with their time, so they began a habit of socializing with all of the neighbors every day. They became quite popular with everyone, but unfortunately, they forgot that the human body decomposes when it's missing everything that keeps it alive. What truly alerted them that they made a big mistake, though, was that all of the neighbors had been calling them Michael this entire time. Realizing that they had eviscerated an innocent man's body to play glorified dress-up, they ejected themselves from his skin, and Baby coughed up some remnant for him to survive. Michael had absolutely no clue what was going on, but after hearing Baby
Hold on, if he
incessantly tell him
turned
he wouldn't
purple
die,
because he was
finally possessed
rotten,
his newfound
does that
purple
mean that
skin
William
and walked
Afton
off.
was already dead?
He still had no bones.
Since he was purple.
Get 10
No,
kilograms
I don't
of
want an
hamburgers
ad.
included and book now with jet2.com.
Now
Sorry,
shunned
I
by the
couldn't
local
control that
populace
one,
for his
guys.
decomposing body, Michael
That was
became
just
a recluse.
unfortunate.
Forcefully isolated from society, he crafted a crude effigy of William
Also,
to
why are you
constantly
in
talk
such a
to and
rush to
feel
end the
appreciated
video?
by. However,
I have just about enough time to quickly say this. This is part 3. This is premiering in 19 minutes. We have 20 minutes left of this episode, and I want to watch this live with you guys. So we are very, very, very quickly trying to finish part 2 so that we can all watch part 3 live together. That's why I'm trying to rush through it. I want to watch the new part that's coming out in literally 18 minutes now with everyone. So that's the plan.
this didn't satisfy Michael. As the years passed, he grew more and more desperate for emotional support, so he decided he wanted to create an animatronic father figure to replace William. Unfortunately, Mike couldn't just go out and buy
What's
the
he gonna do, mate?
materials
The
needed
purple
to
guy
do this,
animatronic?
so he prioritized a different goal. He wanted to restore his body to be able to leave his house. Looking at some preserved meat in his freezer, he realized that he could possibly engineer the refrigerator to fully regenerate his organs. It wouldn't be easy, but it had a chance to work. By the arrival of the new millennium, Henry shut down Fazbear Entertainment for good. Ever since the animatronics escaped, Henry had to resort to utilizing the abandoned animatronics as replacements. Sadly, Circus Baby's entertainment and rentals just couldn't garner the appeal it once had without the original fun times. By the time Henry finally rebranded the company as Chica's Party World and made somewhat competent replacements for the fun times, it was already too late. The company's reputation floundered
Music
no
Man!
So, for the next couple decades, Henry resorted to being a door-to-door salesman to try and forget his past failures. After all this time, urban legends about the abandoned Freddy's locations began spreading across Hurricane. By 2022, a man legally named Phone Dude caught wind of these rumors and started getting
Phone
ideas.
Dude.
His father,
As
Phone
opposed to
Guy, had a very near and dear character to his
There you
heart, Foxy. However, Fazbear Entertainment always showed the most unnecessary of hatred to the character, leading Phone Guy down a depressive spiral for years until his disappearance. Phone Dude knew what he had to do. He needed to avenge his father and assassinate the founders of the company for treating Foxy so poorly. To his amazement,
intense.
Henry showed up at his door one day trying to sell him some old camera equipment. This was perfect. On the spot, Phone Dude told Henry his grand vision for a horror attraction based on Freddy's, and invited him to play the part of the helpless security guard. Henry, delighted at the idea of finally making money again, happily agreed to relive his traumatic past for a quick buck. With that, they stayed in contact while Phone Dude prepared his master plan. After striking a deal with a local amusement park to open Fazbear's Fright within their space,
Oh yes,
Phone
I
Dude
remember
carefully
when
designed the building
Fazbear's
to be
Fright
wired
came to
so
Thorpe Park.
horrifically it was bound to catch on fire.
Good
To really
good
enhance
times.
the experience, he also bought out all of Henry's ancient camera equipment to make it near impossible to monitor the place. By March of 2023,
pretty sure
the
Thorpe
whole
Park is where I got
attraction
this
was just
guy.
about ready to open. All that was left was to find the other founder of the company, William Afton. Drawing a blank on how to find him, Phone Dude asked Henry if he knew of his old partner's whereabouts. Henry attempted to play coy, but somehow gave perfect directions to the abandoned Freddy's location instead.
Yes, don't
Phone
give
Dude,
the
a
faults,
little
you're
confused
gonna
by
get
this
wrong.
answer, decided it was worth a shot and made his way to the building to pry William out of there. After investigating the building all over and finding nothing but Seinfeld tapes and dismembered parts, he suddenly heard an angry shout coming from the boarded-up safe room.
He didn't
After
leave him
kicking
with the
down the door,
Seinfeld
he saw a
tapes.
frustrated animatronic beating up an old arcade machine.
At least
After
he had
taking
an
a
arcade
brief look
machine.
at the high scores, Phone Dude tackled Springtrap and threw him into his truck. Fascinated by how much the world advanced, Springtrap hammered Phone Dude with questions about what all had changed. Not really caring enough to talk to him, Phone Dude threw Springtrap a smartphone and told him to go crazy. Springtrap immediately adapted to this new technology and really put himself out there. After they arrived at the attraction, Phone Dude shot Springtrap with bear tranquilizer
I love
and
the
tossed
idea
him
of
into the
Springtrap.
building
Just
without a
makes
care
it
in the
Twitter
world.
one day.
Once Henry clocked in for his second night on the
I am
job,
gonna read
Phone
that.
Dude
I'm
told
gonna
him he
read
had found
that.
a
I'm not
real
gonna do it right now,
animatronic
so I wanna
rather
finish
than
watching
William
this, but I
to
will
try and
read
poorly
that.
disguise his real
Promise.
intentions. After that, he played some old recordings of Phone Guy on the speakers to try and guilt-trip Henry before the inevitable demolition of Fazbear's Fright. Henry did not notice. Springtrap, horrifically delirious, decided to try and walk off
Oh,
the
someone trying to tell me
tranquilizer by taking
something?
a stroll through the building. Tripping over several knickknacks from his old restaurants, began to reminisce about his creations so much that they appeared before him as phantoms. He wasn't too happy with the selection of characters that appeared, but after ripping off Foxy's hook, he decided to leave well enough alone. After the phantoms took a gander at the building, they all lit themselves on fire in an attempt to warn Springtrap that something was going to go wrong. He wasn't aware enough to take the hint though, so he just ignored them and kept walking. As he approached the office, he was suddenly shocked into furious lucidity with just one glance at the man behind the window. Springtrap's swelling rage over being trapped in the safe room playing Pack-and-Pal for 30 years was enough for him to wage war against Henry.
Looks fucking badass. That's such an amazing shot right there. 10 out of 10.
Henry, however, hadn't even noticed Springtrap standing there. With the awful ventilation in the building, he was in the middle of hallucinating dreams of animatronics and janitors phasing through walls to give ghosts cake. By the time he jolted back to consciousness, the phantoms had been bribed to Springtrap's cause and started a full assault on all the attraction's equipment. Luckily, Henry was great at rebooting things that should have stopped operating already, so this was no problem. Now fueled by the thrill of battle, Henry kept coming back to Fazbear's Fright to go toe-to-toe with Springtrap.
thrill of battle!
Due to the lack of oxygen, though, Henry couldn't really fight him head-on. Instead, Henry resorted to mildly disorienting Springtrap's sense of direction with clips of Balloon Boy's voice. This was pretty obviously a trick, but Springtrap didn't want to miss the chance to see his greatest creation again, so he always double-checked to be sure it wasn't just audio lures. This wasted a lot of time. Eventually, though, he did successfully make his way to the office, just to be met with Henry frantically tapping the wall tiles. Unfortunately, before Springtrap could give him a long-awaited death stare, Henry's camera monitor short-circuited and ignited the whole office. In record time, the entire building was on fire and the place was
What?
caving in. While the phantoms yelled at them with phrases such as, "We told you so," Henry and Springtrap suddenly realized the attraction was a setup. They were not about to let someone else kill them before they could kill each other, so
Oh.
they made a truce and
Oh, okay,
started
never mind,
running.
it's not a
As
part
soon as
two.
they
Sorry,
escaped the
guys.
front door,
I was wrong.
Fazbear's Fright had completely erupted. Phone Dude, who had been camping outside all week, was positively distraught. While he was re-evaluating his choice to let random chance decide the fate of his victims, a Foxy mask fell in front of him and burst into flames. Realizing he had disgraced his bloodline with his failure, Phone Dude exiled himself from society for the rest of his days. After Henry and Springtrap gathered their bearings, the local news department raced over to the wreckage and started taking photos for their dying newspaper. To avoid being sold at an auction, the duo played dead under some rubble until everyone left. Once everybody was gone and the smoke cleared, the former partners looked at each other in awkward silence, waiting for the other to break the truce. After about 32 seconds, Henry grabbed the wire sticking out of Springtrap's ear, got it to spark, and then lit Springtrap's pants on fire before running away. Springtrap, distraught and ashamed by this attack, decided the only way to redeem himself would be to find a replacement for his entire suit. Luckily for him, Springtrap remembered he still had a backup fursuit he had left at Fredbear's Family Diner.
Sky Glass,
never
an
mind.
award-winning
No.
4K TV.
Sky,
by
you're not
Sky.
supposed to, you're not allowed to advertise on
After
my
a few
stream.
days, he
Only
finally got inside
YouTubers.
and realized why it was abandoned there to begin with. That thing was occupied. Springtrap was too embarrassed now to let this stop him, though, so he proceeded to
Why not
tear the
just
costume
steal
off
the
of Harold the
pants?
Janitor's skeleton. Once this was done, he just needed to get rid of his current suit. His most rational decision was to ram himself against the wall until it fell apart. This worked a bit too effectively, and he managed to break most of his left arm off by mistake. He decided this was good enough, so he went ahead and put on the suit. Worried that everyone would only know the name Springtrap as the animatronic with no pants, though, he reluctantly made the call to go back to the name William Afton to avoid scrutiny. Bidding a solemn farewell to his favorite fursuit, William departed from Fredbear's to aimlessly wander Hurricane.
That hits hard. That's
Meanwhile,
sad.
at the Fazbear's Fright auction, the ghosts of the missing children decided it was time
Is
to
that
say
Balloon
goodbye
Boy's
to Hurricane
melted face?
and pass on to whatever was to come. So, Charlie put together one last party in a purgatory pizzeria for them all to celebrate a new beginning. However, conflict arose very quickly. Charlie didn't actually know how to make a good tasting cake with only remnant and frosting, so she quickly thought of a way to save herself embarrassment.
Everyone, look, it's William Afton.
Insulted by what they assumed was a rude prank, all of the children ditched Charlie to go back to haunting Hurricane. Cassidy decided to reconvene with Andrew, who was just chilling at the rejects table wearing an alligator mask. She immediately ripped it off his face and told him to hop onto her shoulders. Once he agreed, they went back to terrorizing Hurricane as their ghostly fusion body, Golden Freddy. Charlie, with nobody to brave the
Love a
unknown
Starbucks,
with,
that'd be
chickened out and
terrifying.
repossessed the puppet, who was still perfectly intact after all this time. The other four children,
Miraculously.
however, had to figure out a new vessel to possess. Since all of their original suits were split up in the auction, they preferred finding something to stick together in. Luckily for them, they were able to find a pile of wires slithering around in the sewers and possessed it. This turned out to be Ennard, and 4 new spirits intruding on their existence caused quite a lot of discomfort. Ballora, furious that she had to babysit 4 new children, decided it was time for her own daughter to move out. After briefly conspiring with the children, she tugged out a random wire and successfully ejected Baby on her first try.
Oh,
This wound up being a bad decision on Ballora's part, as without Baby to call the shots, the missing children established an oligarchy. Once they successfully silenced Ballora, they hightailed it over to the abandoned Chica's party world in search of some
That's
decoration to make them really stand out. After some searching, they found Yendo, who tried proudly showing off his cheap plastic shell to what he assumed were his old friends. Instead, Ennard lit him on fire and stole his melted remains afterward, now dubbing themselves Molten Freddy. Baby, meanwhile, had followed them to the building with the same general idea. After a quick dumpster dive,
Yeah, in the
she was
bottom
able to
left, you
find
can see
enough garbage to reconstruct her body. With that, she quickly came up with the name Scrap Baby, just in case her condition wasn't obvious. Within just a day, Hurricane's cryptid count jumped from 1 to 6. This was
That's
more
pretty
than enough
scary.
to catch Henry's attention, and he felt a little bit responsible for this mess. Henry wanted to try and course correct the fate of Utah and make his legacy a little less awful. So,
Called it
he stole a
paragraph
boatload of
4
old
for animals.
animatronics, quickly crafted some new ones, and bought out an empty building under William Afton's name to avoid legal attention. Henry felt inspired by Phone Dude's failed assassination attempt on him, and he decided to steal the idea. But make it actually work this time. All he had to do was revitalize his
Makes
company,
sense.
attract
Makes sense.
families to his new pizzeria, and if the deadly animatronics showed up, set the place on fire. Easy.
Genius.
But first, he needed to hire a manager to do the actual work for him and act as a shield
This
against
was my
unwanted
Andrew Tate.
legal attention. He attempted this a concerning amount of times, expecting this job to go smoothly, while simultaneously giving no clear instructions as to what he wanted. Several managers came to work and were promptly fired for various reasons. With one listening to Henry's top-secret diary, another being too chicken to salvage the animatronics, and yet another
Was that
getting the place
Shaggy?
sued for kicks and giggles, every manager's run ended up in disaster. Henry was at a loss as to who could possibly run this place competently and accidentally do exactly what he wanted. Luckily, this pizzeria was built right in front of Michael Afton's
My
house.
bottle is empty. That's
Mike had
scary.
made incredible strides in his refrigerator
Do I go
regeneration
downstairs? No,
research.
I just used to think.
After all this time, he had finally
Okay,
grown
that's fine.
back at least some of his organs. He wasn't really sure which ones, but he felt healthy enough to finally go outside.
I'm not sure
With
how
a
he grew
promising
back
job
any of them in a
opportunity right at his
freezer.
doorstep,
That's not
he
how any of it
excitedly signed on to
works.
become the manager of
Pizza
Freddy
sim,
Fazbear's
yeah.
Pizza Place. The building, having been horrendously
Hope he looks
downsized
as
after all of the
confused as he
managerial
is.
failures that preceded Mike's arrival, was nothing more than a small shack with nothing inside. Luckily, Mike was blessed with the Afton genes of incredible financial literacy. Every day, he restored a portion of the restaurant to its former glory. Not only that, each night an animatronic would pop up in the alley to check out what was going on, and Michael got paid to salvage each one and throw them in the vents. First, Molten Freddy. Hearing about a new pizzeria excited them, as they were getting a little sick of being a pile of wires suppressing the voice of a middle-aged woman. With this new location, though, they could perhaps find some new, separate bodies to possess, and make use of the complete collection of Seinfeld episodes they robbed from someone's house. Mike, seeing them so proud of a show that wasn't his favorite, lit the collection on fire and walked away. Molten Freddy, with
We're gonna
4
have
out of 5 of
literal
their spirits
minutes
now
between
shattered,
this and next
trailed behind him
episode.
in a desperate quest for
Because
revenge.
this will
The
have a
next
couple
night,
minutes on the
Michael was
end where
elated
it's
to
just
find that the animatronic
the
before him
outro
was
bit.
William. He didn't
So
particularly
we'll have a
expect his
couple
father
minutes
to
then.
return after all this time as a moldy rabbit, but he'd take what he could get. Unfortunately, William didn't
So we'll
really
have a little
care.
bit of time at
He
the
just
end.
bragged about how he knew this pizzeria was a
And there's
trap,
usually a
given that there were
couple
fire
minute delay
hazard
on the
signs all
live
over the
stream,
place.
where it's like
After that,
60
he
seconds
started trying to workshop new
before we
names for
start,
himself,
you
such
know.
as Scrap Trap with Michael to no avail.
So we're
Mike
gonna have
felt
literal
betrayed by his
minutes.
father's nonchalance about their grand reunion, so he tased William and threw him into Henry's office to make it his problem. The next
that's
day,
your problem,
Scrap
Henry.
Baby finally arrived at the pizzeria. Having done just about everything on her bucket list, from becoming Utah's roller skating champion to inspiring an entire fashion craze, she decided
Well
that the
done.
most reasonable next step was to start murdering people with a giant claw. She had already visited once before to assassinate one of the previous managers, so she figured this would be a piece of cake. To her disappointment, Michael was prepared for this and signed a restraining order on her. Since she already came all this way, though, she just wandered into the ventilation system to try and convince herself this entire pizzeria was actually a gift for her. At this point, William finally regained consciousness and immediately tried to attack Henry. Henry, without a care in the world, just threatened William with a lighter and told him about his newest creation. After having it on his to-do list for decades,
back, William.
he finally created a beautiful animatronic named Lefty. Not only that, it actually managed to capture the puppet. Unfortunately, Henry only found out the puppet was his daughter after he trapped her inside a plastic bear, and he didn't really know how to let her out.
I was even going to sell it to your son for $5, but Michael wound up salvaging it. I may or may not be down 5,000 instead.
You gave him $5,000?
Yes. Now I'm bankrupt again.
Enraged that Michael robbed him of the chance to finally get his $5 back, William scrambled into the vents to try and assassinate his son. Mike was an expert at keeping everyone at bay, though, and after a few more days of
I love
unmatched
how
success with
Springtrap
his
was
pizzeria, he
reacting
had reached the
to
most important
Henry
day of his
realizing
career.
his daughter was
This,
in
however,
the suit.
when Scrap
He was
Baby
just like,
decided to gloat about being
yeah,
stuck there.
if you'd asked
She
me,
was
I would
really
have told
desperate
you.
to justify
Um,
any reason for staying this long, so she just tried pushing the narrative that William set this place up for her so she could kill children
Can
and
I
make
give
him
you some
proud.
feedback?
Nobody
Sure, sure.
believed her, seeing as William was right there with no stake in this other than getting his money.
I'll always take
Tired of
feedback so I
listening
can
to
try and
Baby
improve the
ramble,
content.
Henry
for you
interrupted
guys.
her and finally delivered a speech he had been rehearsing for the past month or so.
Unfortunately, the only
Although he
feedback I
mostly
get
just made
is
guesses about everyone's
the
motivations for
elbow.
being there, all the animatronics were impressed
Make
by
your
his
face cam bigger?
performance.
I can
So
do
much so that they didn't even notice that the building was on fire.
I can do that.
Michael, only paying attention when Henry mentioned an exit planned for him, immediately rushed out of there before the fire
Stupid.
could kill him. The smoke did get to him a little bit, though,
Is that
and he
better?
wound up coughing up some stray remnant. Hopefully he didn't need that. The others, however, weren't so lucky. Soon,
I don't know if that's
each and
even-
every one of the animatronics
Yeah, that
were
is bigger.
destroyed as the building was engulfed in flames. With that, Henry finally ended the horrific legacy of Fazbear Entertainment.
That's a little bit bigger.
Just kidding. After the smoke cleared, everyone in Hurricane arrived at the ruins of the pizzeria to see what had happened, while random civilians took off with the remaining animatronics and games that survived the fire. A rescue team discovered a body in the ventilation system and rushed it to the hospital. Not really questioning
Somehow,
why this clearly
acting has
charred
survived.
corpse was wearing a rabbit suit, the doctor accepted it as a patient and diagnosed it with a coma. While the hospital searched for anyone that actually knew who this was, a single visitor showed up that they just kind of assumed was a relative, Golden Freddy. When they arrived at the patient's bedside, they immediately knew it was William Afton and plunged into his mind to cause him crazy nightmares. William, now dreaming about a character select screen of various animatronics he had some general hand in creating, decided that the best course of action was to fight them all
William, now
at once
dreaming
in
of a
the most
Mortal
deadly
Kombat
state.
battle screen.
Unbeknownst to him, of course, this was a setup by Cassidy and Andrew.
I love that. I love
Andrew
that.
never got to take revenge on William
guy
like all
makes
the
the
other
best
kids
memes.
did, so he begged Cassidy to drag everyone she knew away from a peaceful afterlife to help torture William in his sleep. The most insidious part of this plan, however, was taking the newest iteration of Foxy they could find and making him William's only ally in this nightmare. Eventually, William was conditioned to finally appreciate Foxy's existence, which was the most severe punishment the Golden Duo could imagine for him. After getting the satisfaction of killing William over and over again, Andrew started getting a bit full of himself and started taking credit for all of the work Cassidy had put in. Not only that, but he got so self-absorbed
Yeah, Cassidy
that
was
he
the one who
regarded
programmed
himself as
UCM.
the one you should not have killed. Cassidy wasn't having any of that, so after William somehow beat them at their own game, she ditched Andrew and everyone else followed suit. When William awoke, he realized Michael was wheeling him out of the hospital. Excited that he somehow avoided all the possible consequences of his actions, he began to concoct some brand new schemes, right as Michael shoved him back into the wrecked pizzeria and walked home. Michael had gotten what he needed from his father. In fact, he got everything he needed from just about everyone. Getting to manage a successful Freddy's was one of the best experiences he ever had, and he wasn't satisfied with the place being destroyed after only a week. He created a new plan, and with everyone out of his way, he bought the rights to the defunct Fazbear Entertainment and
For
began
$5.
constructing his new bear-themed empire. With that, we reach the end of this chapter of the timeline.
Alright. So, there's a little bit of outro stuff there, but we're not going to watch through this.
Oh well, it'll be
We just don't have time to. This is part 3. Here is the plan, okay? I prefer to tap downstairs to the one upstairs, so I'm literally going to run downstairs in my house, refill my bottle, run back up, and I should be back before we even start. Little bit of time before it starts. So I'm gonna really quickly read what that long message was. Scott had an idea that someone was wearing a suit that's controlled by a remote, and his brother started playing with it, and he got mangled into inhuman shapes. Oh yeah, that was one of the book ideas. That's an actual story, and it was gonna be the main cover, but he cancelled the cover because it was too graphic. Oh my god, I'm getting mad. That was getting pretty intense. Alright, part 3.
no see.
He's back!
Are you ready to continue?
Yes!
What are you doing? Some light reading. Don't spoil yourself. Allow me to do the hard work for you and continue the most undeniable.
I really want to see how he handles security breach.
William Afton, after a long day's work in a
We're going
$5
back.
spree, decided to head back out to the dining area of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and stand around like nothing happened. However, the entire restaurant was in a panic, as one of the customers caught sight of Henry doing that blank stare thing again. William decided this was the perfect time to finally confront Henry about the $5 he was owed, but out of the corner of his eye, he saw a suspicious boy jump out of the ball pit. William had seen this kid before, socializing with some regulars in recent weeks. He wasn't typically one to speculate what the patrons were up to, but he strongly felt something was up with this boy in particular, so he decided to traumatize him for kicks and giggles. William lured the child to the safe room and graced him with the sight of all the freshly stuffed missing children. The kid, being reasonably
into the
horrified at
pit?
this, made a mad dash back to the ball pit as William chased after him. Once he dove back in, though,
Wait, is that what I'm
decided-
supposed to do? Wait, okay, on Into the Pit, I'm stuck at the moment. Am I supposed to go back to the ball pit? I'm gonna try that at the end of the stream, and if that's what I'm supposed to do, I'm gonna be mad as hell.
It wasn't worth the trouble of going any further. That ball pit was not pleasant, so William was just about ready to forfeit the chase, until the ball pit lit up. William realized there was something much more mysterious about this than meets the eye, so he decided to come back to it after making some preparations. The next morning, he got dressed for a potential vacation destination, staged
After
a
coming
photo
back
shoot
with an
that
M60
Henry had a
machine
vague
gun.
idea of where he was, and donned the spring bodysuit before plunging into the pit. The year is 2023.
This looks like it's gonna
Oswald,
focus
the
too
boy that
much
had
on
taken advantage of a time
yeah,
traveling
into the
ball
pit
in a
and
shady pizzeria named
books.
Jeff for the past few weeks, suddenly emerged from it in a panic to be greeted by his confused and upset father. Before his dad could give him a stern talking to, though, William Afton caught him by surprise and
I think I
dragged
was
him down
supposed
the
to-
depths of the dingy pit to get himself out. William was taken aback at how easily he caught up to Oswald, but figured there must have been some inexplicable time dilation that made things more convenient. With all that settled, William took Oswald out of the pizzeria, discovered what a GPS was, and took the boy home. Although he was fascinated by his surroundings, he couldn't fully take it all in. He was too focused on the bit. Once they arrived at the house, he sneakily bribed Oswald's mother to play along with this until further notice. After Oswald fell asleep, William decided he felt like snooping in his belongings for the heck of it. After sifting through pages of one of the boy's notebooks, he found drawings of the old Freddy's mascots accompanied by various attempts at characters he didn't recognize. William's curiosity of what this was supposed to look like was enough to inspire him, so he grabbed some spare junk from the garage and began working on a new animatronic to see what would happen. Overnight, William's mess of parts somehow turned into a fully polished masterpiece. However, upon seeing he had created nothing but a conventionally attractive female character, William immediately lost interest, so he threw her in the trash before going to sleep. The next day, Oswald
If
decided
Eleanor
to pursue his
isn't
father
into the
before it was
pit,
too late. Although
that
William
would be
tried his
so
best
cool.
to stop the boy, Oswald managed to knock him back. William, disoriented, clumsily stumbled into a net and hung himself before Oswald and his friends escaped. Fortunately, poor
Executed
structural
himself.
integrity came to the suffocating William's rescue.
Ah.
The ball pit's net snapped, launched William down and out the ball pit, and he skyrocketed back into the Freddy's parking lot in 1985 as if nothing happened. Meanwhile, in 2023,
I love the idea that he was
local
nearly
entrepreneur
executed
Michael
by a
Afton
child.
finally organized all of his plans for the revival of Fazbear Entertainment. He wasn't quite at the point he was hoping for, though, thanks to Hurricane City Council catching that all of his documents showing their approval for different projects had forged signatures. Normally, they'd let this kind of thing slide, but they all had unanimous beef with Freddy's, and seemingly had a means to shut Michael's plans down. Upon the discovery of training tapes at the wreckage of its most recent disaster, it was made apparent that the company was meant to be finished off for good. Knowing his good looks couldn't get him out of this one, Michael thought of a more practical solution to this problem. So, he quickly tampered with the tapes while nobody was looking.
Pardon me, but if you wouldn't mind rewatching this tape, I do believe you'll find yourselves to be mistaken about the state of the company.
There is need for you to return to work next week, as Fazbear Entertainment is a corporate entity.
The city council's hands were tied by this indisputable evidence, and they begrudgingly allowed Michael to continue his business ventures, as long as he didn't immediately build a giant building over half the town. So, with that, Michael decided to buy out Jeff's Pizzeria, since it was just a crudely repurposed Freddy's location anyway. Using blueprints left in the office, Mike made near-perfect recreations of the classic animatronics. Everything was looking up for Michael, and his efforts rewarded him with massive success. Hearing the cacophony of customers at Freddy's every day made Mike confident in the pizzeria, and now he wanted to pursue a more personal project. After scouting out local scientists, he kidnapped Phineas Taggart to assist him in a new product for Fazbear Entertainment. Michael described his vision to Taggart, a marvelous substance that could violently clone and replace anyone.
Was
it
Mangle
touched.
just hanging in the
When
back?
questioned why he
Yeah,
wanted to
Mangle's
create such a thing,
hanging.
Michael simply brushed it off as necessary
Oh,
trauma,
poor
much
Mangle.
like what he had to go through to become a successful entrepreneur.
Okay, but why do we need to make Fazgoo specifically?
It will build character.
Taggart was somehow satisfied
It will
with
build
his answer,
character. That's
and
all I
after
needed to hear.
26
I'm
and a
in.
half minutes, he had developed the first ever sample of Fazgoo.
Only 6 minutes.
Michael was ecstatic at the sight of this creation, but he needed to be sure it worked.
Reminds
Before he
me of
could dismiss
something.
Taggart, though, the scientist begged him for payment. Mike did not want to give actual money to this guy, so he just tossed him a robot dog and kicked him out. Meanwhile, the rejected animatronic from William Afton's vacation had been hauled to the dump. After a while, a stray soul discovered it and decided to call it home. This turned out to be William's ex-wife, Eleanor Schmidt, who had been kicked out of Molten Freddy during
I
William
hate the
Wade's
Eleanor
final place of
animatronic just because I
glory.
think it's
The
a really
children
creepy
inhabiting
idea.
the animatronic mass voted that Eleanor didn't deserve to move on with them, so they quickly ejected her so she'd be stuck in this plane of existence indefinitely. After recollecting herself after all this time spent sitting in the backseat of Ennard, she gathered that this animatronic had no discernible characterization prior to her possession. So, having the full jurisdiction to present his...
I don't know, it's got a
please,
thin waist as well as
she
a thick
decided to
chest
just
and
go by
hips.
Eleanor.
That's pretty good
While adjusting
characterizations.
to her new body, Eleanor realized that her dress had a feature she only thought was possible in her wildest dreams. It had pockets. She needed to make use of these immediately, so she quickly looked around the junkyard for something worthy to put inside them. Her eyes were drawn to a pile of strange discs within the trunk.
Oh, I thought those were condoms.
So
I was really
Eleanor went
scared.
ahead and grabbed them. Upon taking them, however, the sound waves these discs emitted granted her with cosmic power beyond her human understanding. Eleanor, realizing she could do anything she desired,
She accidentally became a god.
to her old accounting firm, expecting to get right back to work. Her old boss was bewildered at the sight of her again and grimly told her she was laid off and replaced 38 years prior. She did not take this news well. Filled with sudden rage, Eleanor killed her former boss and was quickly enamored by the power his agony fueled her with. She became obsessed with feeding on more of this, so she started plotting what to do next. Now holding a grudge against basically any...
I mean, if I had all the powers in the
she
universe,
targeted
I'd
every
just
major
make myself a
corporation she could
YouTube
think
figure,
of
but
and obliterated
I
all of
suppose
the
murder
people in
works
charge of
too.
them. Now filled with triple the infinite power she had already, Eleanor was ready to claim victory as the greatest evil the world has ever known. To her surprise, though, basically everyone on Earth that was subjected to these corporations was happy about their immediate quality of life boost, and Eleanor was hailed as a benevolent revolutionary, siphoning the agony right out of her with their collective joy. Becoming the hero of the working class was not what Eleanor had in mind. Although she kind of enjoyed the respect, that didn't do anything for her newfound hunger, and she needed to cause more problems. To avoid repeating the same mistake as before, she decided to keep things local. Drawing inspiration from how her ex-husband managed to discover Remnant, she warped to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to do what William did, but better. However, as she approached the front door, Michael caught sight of her and immediately grew suspicious.
Who are you, and what are you doing here?
It's me, your mother. No hard feelings about the scooping incident, right? No matter. I'm here to massacre all of your patrons.
Shut the door. Shut the door, Michael.
How predictable.
Being called out on the spot like that really got under
Well done.
Eleanor's skin. She would have murdered Michael out of spite in any other circumstance, but given she did owe him after the scooping incident, she let this personal attack slide. Eleanor needed to prove Mike wrong, though, so she decided to pull asinine stunts nobody would ever think to do. After that, an unlucky child just so happened to pass by Eleanor's line of sight, and Eleanor decided this kid was the perfect first victim to truly test her power. The child, named Sarah, was minding her own business as Eleanor followed her closely. As Sarah approached the suspiciously plot-relevant dump, Eleanor warped to the trunk she found before for the girl to notice her. Sarah was incredibly transfixed with the animatronic's beauty, and excitedly carried her home to use as a display piece or something.
Damn!
At
Damn,
night,
she's
Eleanor
strong.
figured this would be the perfect time to activate and begin her plan. She promised Sarah that she could make her wildest dream come true, to be beautiful. Sarah, not understanding that she was perfectly fine the way she was, immediately agreed to this proposal. However, Eleanor told her she needed to forever wear her pendant for this to work. Over the next several days, Sarah was completely transformed. She became much more popular, much more confident in her looks, and much more paranoid that something would go wrong. And go wrong something did. With just one slip on a comically placed banana peel, Eleanor's pendant flew right off of Sarah's neck. To Sarah's terror, Eleanor was actually replacing her body with chunks of scrap metal, and the pendant was all that kept her hollow metallic membrane together. Sarah desperately ran back home to try and beg for Eleanor's help, to which the animatronic welcomed her by shifting into a look-alike of the girl's original body. Had she survived,
1
Sarah
billion
may have
IQ.
gleaned some sort of moral from this whole ordeal, but unfortunately she had completely fallen apart into a miserable pile of scraps. Eleanor retrieved her
Jesus
pendant,
Christ.
now charged with terrible agony once again.
I remember the
This
story,
boosted
but I didn't know
power,
she died at
was
the
ready
end.
to take on the entire population of Hurricane in increasingly strange and specific ways. Meanwhile, Phineas Taggart was on a personal hunt for random junk. This particular night led him to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, now in a sinkhole, where
he gonna
William
find
Afton
Spring?
and Andrew
Yep.
just sat around playing Uno. Andrew's anger at William had settled quite a bit. All he had to do was scream into some trash, and soon enough he hadn't a clue why he was mad in the first place. Unfortunately, the trespassing
Love that.
Taggart wound up interrupting their game and slammed his robot dog onto Andrew's spirit, tethering his remnant to the toy's battery. William looked up at the man in mild distress. To avoid being tackled, tased, or anything else, he hastily got up and followed the man wherever he was going. On that note, Taggart arrived at his lab with his new trinkets, and Andrew
Am I doing
requested
2 live
finish
streams at once?
William
No.
Afton.
Again,
Taggart didn't initially
this
plan
is a
on
live
anything
stream
special
by a
with the
different
junk he was
guy, a guy
collecting,
called
but finding a stray
Ooftroop.
soul
This
in
is
an
not me,
animatronic
this is a
body
very
truly
different
motivated
guy
him
to
try
me.
and do something spectacular with it all.
This
To
is
his
someone
amusement,
separate
the zombie
entirely.
was absolutely
This
hideous,
guy is not
and
me,
Taggart
this is
just
not my
had to make
content,
William's
I'm just
unsightliness
reacting to
no
his
joke.
content.
Please. I could have looked that far.
Terrified of the sight of his suit being horrendously burnt and broken, William accidentally death stared his reflection and he exploded. Taggart, delighted by the sudden haunted gunk all over his treasures, decided to take advantage of this and mash them all together into a new creation. This new animatronic not only merged
I like the
souls
idea
of
that William
and Andrew into
accidentally
one body,
died.
it also introduced a third spirit into the mix. This was a child named Jake, whose death shockingly had nothing to do with Afton or Freddy's.
Oh,
With his
that's
good
new.
temperament compared to the other two, he got to pilot the animatronic, while William and Andrew were stuck being backseat drivers. Taggart was delighted at his
Yeah,
having
I
such
think
great
that is
but
hell
his
for
joy was
William Afton.
short-lived as William convinced Jake to slap the mad scientist. As it turned out, Afton's presence within the animatronic killed Phineas Taggart on the spot. Jake was
damn.
absolutely horrified about this, but Andrew wasn't particularly bothered about it. After surveying the damage, they deduced that they should just wait for someone else to handle it. So, they sat there and waited until a garbage collector found them. Sure enough, though, the mere touch of the Stitch Wraith was all it took to kill this guy, too. Immediately, Jake
Oopsie.
realized who was responsible for this. William had already been giving off bad vibes, but now he looked blatantly proud of himself. When Jake tried to explain this, though, Andrew came to William's defense.
What's so bad about him? He cheated at Uno once.
He literally killed 2 people just now!
Lies and slander.
No, I did do that. As a matter of fact, I killed you too.
I think I'd remember being murdered.
Jake needed to solve this fast. After some internal bickering, he learned about Andrew screaming into stuff to release his rage. With that information, Jake reasoned that putting those pieces back together could potentially refresh Andrew's memory. He'd remember why William was a problem, and they could finally get rid of the purple parasite. After a few weeks of running around on a garbage hunt, and with only a few extra casualties,
Not
the
Luigi.
Stray headed
Wait,
to
was
an
that Astro
abandoned
Speed?
factory to use its trash compactor on its collection. Suddenly, intruding on the scene was Detective Everett Larson, who had been tracking down the Stitch Wraith this entire time to try and cope with his divorce or something. As Larson prepared to
Weird.
shoot it down, Jake suddenly caught notice of him and backflipped into the trash compactor in an act of defiance. As the Stitch Wraith
What's that
crumbled
going to
together with all
accomplish?
the junk, Andrew finally remembered what he was so angry at William Afton about. He was just about ready to throw hands with his killer once more, but he quickly gathered he may have been out of his league. After the Stitch Wraith flipped into the trash heap, William's soul transferred to the garbage and began forging it all together into a new body. After causing a chain reaction,
I was gonna say,
of
wouldn't
failed
it just be
machinery,
crushed into
William
nothing?
blew up the factory and used its debris to his advantage, growing into a 15-foot-tall monstrosity. So, making the decision to cut his losses, Andrew quietly made a run for it while he still could. Larson,
Yeah,
shocked
Andrew
at
said,
how
"Fuck that."
dramatically the situation escalated, spent this valuable time throwing insults at the giant trash rabbit. William wasn't fazed by this, though, and simply proclaimed,
Yeah, I think he's won. That's a GG.
Did somebody say agony?
Eleanor was there too, apparently. After learning of the Afton Amalgamation's existence, she quickly launched herself into it to try and absorb its power. This caused Afton to become far more violent, and Larson was nearly killed by the amalgamation.
Damn.
Before it could finish him off, though, he began hearing a voice coming from his bag. It was the mask of the puppet, or at least his delirious mind figured it must have been. Nonetheless, he tossed it at Afton's shins, and the impact caused him to fall apart like a house of cards. As Afton sank into the lake near the wreckage, he noticed Eleanor escaping his collapsing body, and he recognized her instantly. Not only was she his abandoned creation from his time travel vacation, he felt the spite emanating from her, and knew it could be only one person. The woman who he once probably loved, then definitely hated, had managed to become far more than he ever was. And so, he looked at her in bittersweet longing before everything faded to black. William Afton was dead. Now that the amalgamation was destroyed, the Stitch Wraith ran to Larson's aid. Jake was all on his own now, and he wasn't going to let anyone else die. So, he whacked the detective with his battery, and that got rid of the lingering agony left behind by Afton. Now that Larson was a little less half-dead than before, he immediately tried to fight Eleanor. She wasn't impressed by his
I love the
endeavor.
idea that
She
in the
dragged him into a
FNAF
highlight
lore,
reel inside
we
her
have a
house.
15-foot animatronic and
Investigations. Your
a woman
hunt for the
having a fight to
Stitch
the
Wraith.
death.
Your failed marriage. Who do you think is behind it all?
Bad luck, I guess.
Oh, I thought I was being more obvious. Sorry. Anyway, it was me all along. You didn't know it, Larson, but I was always there.
Larson,
Damn.
horrified by the truth revealed to him by this master of disguise,
She Batman
immediately
this
shot
shit.
Eleanor 4 times in a row. This managed to disorient her enough to warp to another memory, where Larson then grabbed a baseball bat and bashed her head off. This went on for a while, weakening Eleanor but also not accomplishing too much otherwise. From an outsider's perspective, Larson and Eleanor just stayed in one place silently. The Stitch Wraith was bored of waiting, so Jake decided to see what would happen if he tried to interact with Eleanor without Afton infecting his touch. This allowed the Stitch Wraith to peer into her memories. While Larson and Eleanor were still having their grand battle, Jake discovered Eleanor's worst memory.
I heard Billy D. Williams was in this one. Oops. Spoilers.
Confused by what the problem here was, but nonetheless undeterred, the Stitch Wraith grabbed Eleanor and launched her into the memory to be stuck forever. Now that Jake had saved the planet from Eleanor's wrath, he felt fulfilled in
How'd
his
they get
purpose.
out, though?
With that, he moved on from this world, and the Stitch Wraith was no more.
Oh.
Larson, now sitting alone in the wreckage of a factory
Well
with
done.
two lifeless animatronics in front of him, deliberated what
3.
to do now.
Not 2,
He knew
3.
this was going to cause a big stink.
Don't forget the
for police
15-foot
department
one.
if he didn't have a believable explanation on hand. So he just tossed Eleanor and the Stitch Wraith's bodies into the ball pit at Freddy's and blamed their hijinks on Fazbear Entertainment. Michael Afton, now facing immense
Isn't that going to
backlash
cause a
from
weird
the
problem in the
company,
80s with
had to
these
figure out a way to save its
2
reputation
animatronics and a
before it
15-foot
collapsed
animatronic
all
showing up
over
out of the
again.
middle of nowhere?
He
I'm not
checked
going
his
to question
plans
it.
for anything that could help him, and to his relief, there was a perfect solution. All Mike had to do was cover up these allegations by touting them as fictional events from a video game series. After interrogating his board of directors to see if any of them knew how to make a game, one of them spoke up and said they knew of someone that could. This led Michael to a failed indie developer with a desolate hope for success, Steve Snodgrass. Steve's only claim to fame was a critically panned promotional title for El Chips, but Mike could feel the potential oozing from this creator. Steve just needed a spark, and Michael gave him lightning. Steve,
Is
ecstatic
Steve
at the
some kind of
opportunity to
weirdo?
make appropriate use of his uncanny modeling style, quickly whipped up a game called Five Nights at Freddy's. It was pretty simple, but Michael thought it was a perfect starting point. After Steve posted this game under the guise that it was totally unauthorized, it immediately skyrocketed in popularity. People were playing it left and right, and most importantly, those curious about the game's hidden lore
Markiplier!
started to
Map
confuse
Pat!
historical facts
Yeah!
with fiction. Michael needed Steve to make a sequel, fast. Steve then churned out 2 more in only a couple days to resounding success. Mike
Amazing.
realized quickly, though, that these games weren't actually helping with the current controversy the company was facing. Whatever skeletons were once in Henry's closet were of no concern to him. So Mike decided to assassinate Steve Snodgrass and cover up his death with a fan-made spin-off title. With that taken care of, Mike quickly commissioned an anthology book series to spoof recent incidents with Eleanor and the Stitch Wraith.
You were
Despite
asking
the fact
earlier about the
everyone knew
canonicity
about
of
these
the
public
books.
menaces,
That's
the
your
prospect
answer.
of reading about them made the public immediately stop caring. All Michael needed to do now was to tie it all back together by framing Steve Snodgrass as some random lunatic trying to deface his brand. So, he commissioned a
she's taking
studio called
Manhattan.
Silver Parasol to make
I'm
a
pretty sure that
virtual
was a
reality
cancelled
game
idea that
cemented
Scott
all
had.
of the rumors of Fazbear Entertainment as nothing more than fiction. Development was pretty standard, all things considered. The studio focused on remaking all 3 of the original Fnaf games in VR, and then Michael personally provided them with scribblings of his own life experiences to use as inspiration
Math
for new
man.
levels. Alongside this, he also tossed
PlayStation
them various
87.
circuit boards,
You're right.
notably from Scrap Trap and some old endoskeleton hardware. He told the developers that it helped make the characters
I hope
perform and
Scrap Trap's
pathfind
bones
more
aren't in
authentically
there.
in-game, to which everyone collectively told him that's not how it works. After some gentle negotiation, Michael convinced the team to scan the circuit boards anyway. This didn't seem to really accomplish anything initially, but soon something awakened within the VR game that nobody yet knew about. William Afton, against all odds, came back from complete eradication again due to lingering remnant on Scrap Trap circuit boards possessing a program called Mimic 1. Observing the virtual space around him, William started digging through files to obtain a more tangible form. To his disappointment, he wasn't all too pleased with any of the Spring Bonnie or Springtrap models available to him. So, instead, William used the power of 3D modeling software to manifest a digital recreation of his wonderful pajamas. To save his new form, he overwrote an
Guess
unused
who's
Springtrap
back?
model named Glitchtrap and
Back
decided
again.
that worked perfectly for his new environment. He was considering the name Malhair, but he had no idea how to rename the files, so he just settled with what he had. As production continued and beta tests began, Glitchtrap encountered Jeremy Fitzgerald II, the security guard Balloon Boy chewed on once. Now working as a QA tester, Jeremy tried to write off Glitchtrap as nothing more than a bug. As time went on, though, he wound up being captivated by the virtual rabbit rattling off nitpicks about the game's character models and level maps. Jeremy agreed that this was a problem, and he promised Glitchtrap that he'd set things right and make the VR game as accurate as he could. The other
Oh, that's
developers,
cool.
however, felt insulted by the sudden onslaught of criticism Jeremy provided. None of it seemed rational or helpful, so they all conspired to get rid of him. After finding a guillotine paper cutter, the Silver Parasol development team cut off Jeremy's face and made it look like he did it in a fit of hysteria. Jeremy didn't really appreciate this, so he finally quit his job as a QA tester and sued Silver Parasol for cutting off his face. With his position now open, a successor dubiously named Tape Girl.
Holy fuck,
Tape
that was
Girl, much
diabolical.
like Jeremy, was also unusually intertwined with the history of Fazbear Entertainment. Her brother, Foam Dude, had sucked her into a passionate interest in the company while he constructed Fazbear's Fright. Now that he had gone missing, she decided to pick up his slack and participate in the company's current renaissance.
I like the
Glitchtrap,
character
upon seeing
design.
Tape Girl, recognized her as one of Phone Guy's children and reasoned that she wasn't to be trusted. He had been burned by both her father and brother already, and he wasn't going to let that happen again. So, Glitchtrap went out of his way to freak her out as much as possible while she tried to beta test the game. Becoming terrified of this anomaly, and discovering that Silver Parasol was shutting down due to Jeremy's lawsuit, she hastily began to record audio logs documenting Glitchtrap's presence and other details that could help whatever QA tester replaced her. As she continued attempting to delete the anomaly from the game, Glitchtrap devised a plan to attach himself to her virtual tapes in
Welcome
order
back,
to
Aiden.
prevent her from killing him. By the time she figured this out, it was too late. So she hid the audio files across the game as well as she could before development was switched over. Glitchtrap wasn't going to let Tape Girl go that easy though, so on her last day on the job, he created a brand new level meant just for her. As Tape Girl followed his bunny trail, she soon realized that he was the one responsible for the murders that plagued Freddy's all along. Feeling more and more tangled within the virtual reality, Tape Girl soon found herself trapped within the suit of Freddy Fazbear as Glitchtrap celebrated her digital demise. Now that Silver Parasol was no longer developing the Fazbear virtual experience, Michael wiped all known traces of the company and its employees from existence. The replacement studio was
I hope
run
Tape
directly
Girl
by
wasn't still
Fazbear
wearing that
Entertainment,
headset.
and they sent out some help wanted ads to get fresh beta testers. Soon enough, a new hire caught wind of the job opportunity and applied as soon as possible. This applicant was a passionate Five Nights at Freddy's fan named Vanessa Shelley. Vanessa was extremely excited to get the chance to test a brand new Fnaf game. She wasn't confident that the new studio would uphold the franchise's integrity from the Snodgrass trilogy, but she chose to be optimistic. After putting on the headset for the first time, Vanessa excitedly combed through the entire game with almost nothing but enthusiasm. Experiencing her favorite series in total immersion was a feeling like no other. She was having a blast. She was a little disappointed that most of the lore elements were seemingly gutted here, but that was a small price to pay compared to everything else. As she continued, though, she noticed some strange glitches throughout the various levels.
Is that the Diva
Maybe
pistol?
this was some kind of new storyline
Oh no, it's
she
a
was
glitch tape,
unraveling.
sorry.
After discovering a hidden area within the game, Vanessa was able to piece together Tape Girl's recordings and discover the truth. To her horror, this wasn't just new lore, this was real. Upon this realization, Vanessa felt a shiver down her spine as she turned around to see a certain someone behind her.
Guess who's back? Back again. Afton's back.
What? You don't like the voice?
Is this better?
After Vanessa took a short break to recover from that scare, she hesitantly put her headset back on and continued.
He better not
using
be
the game.
British.
As she played, she noticed the Glitchtrap became more tangible as she found more of Tape Girl's messages. Vanessa was uneasy, but she decided that maybe it would be best to actually talk to the anomaly. Glitchtrap stood before her in relative silence, so she took this as a cue to speak. What started with conversation of her experience testing the game led to her entire interpretation of the Fnaf timeline, including every ounce of external media
Shitty
she was
files.
aware of.
And then when Springtrap found him, he did a spot-on impression of the stepdad and then later stuffed him into an oven in Fazbear's Frights, and I think the actual place burned down, but it didn't in FNAF 3.
Who on earth is handsome?
Glitchtrap had heard enough. Whatever nonsense Vanessa was recounting was absolutely nothing like what actually happened. So he caught her up to speed on the actual events of his life, from Ferdinand's creation to Afton's amalgamation eradication.
He showed her parts 1 and
Vanessa
2.
was over the moon. She never could have anticipated getting such a comprehensive understanding of all of Freddy's history, and she was shocked at how different the real answers were compared to the storyline the FNAF games portrayed. At this point, she decided she wanted to help Glitchtrap somehow escape the game. So, like any rational person, Vanessa decided to let Glitchtrap merge with her mind.
Makes
Moving
sense.
her headset, Vanessa now saw William by her side in the real world.
Hey, sup, man?
To be honest, I'd do
No, I
that.
think
That just
the
seems
other
like
voice is
something
better,
fun to
actually.
do.
You are so picky.
Afton, now
I think it'd be
inhabiting
kind of
Vanessa's
cool
brain,
just to
wasn't keen
have
on
William
being
Afton
confined in
chilling
someone
with you.
else's body again, so he begged her to help him find a new body for himself. After thinking
You can
through
never get
everything he
lonely
had
because
told
you can
her,
just start
Vanessa
talking to
decided
Purple
that she'd
Guy.
make her own personalized rabbit suit to keep William quiet while they tried to get him back into a physical form. Because that'd take a while,
You won't get tired of my voice, will you?
crafted a mask in time for the Halloween festival Freddy's was putting together. Speaking of which,
Good
Michael
reference,
Afton was
good
preparing
reference.
something big. He had been postponing his plans to make an animatronic father figure long enough, and it was time to finally set things in motion. He needed a perfect vessel, though, something his own father created. After some consideration, Michael took a visit
He still
to the
thinks he has a
graveyard and
brother,
dug up the
Lamau.
original Fredbear's body. He was going to revive the animatronic and make him into the perfect Papa Bear. Unsure of how to go about reviving an artificial intelligence, Mike figured that obscene amounts of electricity would do the trick. So he
Makes
quickly
sense.
stitched Fredbear back together and ran some tests to try and bring him back to life. And it was a success. Michael had let time slip right past
All he
him,
had to
though.
do was
Fazbear
sharpen his
Fall
brain a
Fest was
little.
only in a few days, and he had yet to make the perfect attraction for it. All at once, it dawned on him that he could present the revived animatronic as Fredbear until he could fix him up properly. Sure enough, this worked perfectly, and at long last, Fredbear was the star of the show for the first time in decades. While attending the festival, Vanessa ruminated on her recent life choices. As she half-heartedly participated in the various attractions, William finally learned that Michael was behind all of this. For the first time in his unnaturally prolonged existence, he finally felt somewhat proud of his son. Before he could stew over this new emotion, though, Vanessa accidentally bumped right into the entrepreneur. Vanessa, utterly embarrassed, began to profusely apologize, to which Mike
Makes
just
sense.
blankly stared at her, waiting for her to go away. This led to Vanessa rambling once more about her obsession with his company.
Oh,
Only
no.
this time she had all of William's knowledge at her disposal. Michael, initially uninterested, was taken aback by Vanessa's inexplicable understanding of Fazbear Entertainment's history. After evaluating whether or not to dispose of her, he determined she may be useful and gave her a new job with special attention. Vanessa was now part
She
of the
knows
security
too
team for a new project Mike was working on, the Fazbear Fun Time service. This was a special delivery service where Fazbear Entertainment mass-produced replicas
You
of
seem
some
to
of
know a
the
lot about the
iconic
history of this
characters from the business's
franchise.
legacy and rented them out for
How good are you at
criminally high
delivery
prices.
driving?
Vanessa was fascinated by this concept,
Logical
and
jump.
William realized this would be the perfect way to get a recreation of his favorite fursuit. So, on Vanessa's first day as security, she hacked into the system with her gamer skills and ordered production of Springtrap animatronics. By the time
I love
higher-ups
that.
noticed something unusual about this, they all shrugged it off since Springtrap was probably profitable enough to rent out. William was thrilled that his body had been perfectly
Springtrap was
remade,
profitable.
but he got
Before
cold
it shut
feet
down,
once
I
he
bought
realized
him.
Fazbear Entertainment was producing so much of him.
Well,
He didn't
actually,
want
I
just
bought
be
the
in-
pack that gives you like a bunch of lures, and I beat Springtrap enough times that I managed to get the Springtrap suit. I am really sad that they shut down the mobile game. There's a modded version of it, which I don't know if it's still running or not. If it is, I'll definitely do a video on it because it would just be cool. But I don't know. It's kind of sad that they shut it down. Who did I have? I had the Freddy suit, I had the Chica suit, I had the Foxy suit. I don't think I had Bonnie. No, I had Bonnie, I didn't have Foxy, that's who I was missing. I had Balloon Boy, I had Circus Baby, and I had Springtrap. I think I had Boiler Baby. Did I have Valentine's Baby? I think I did. But no, it's quite sad that they shut that down, because I quite liked it. Even though it ran like utter shit. Once they did an update that changed the UI, you used to just have this like blue button, and then they changed it so you got like, this weird console that takes up half the screen. And as soon as they did that, some reason it started running like shit. It'd go from being this beautiful 60 FPS smooth thick thing to like 2 FPS. It ran like utter shit. They ruined it basically. It could have lived for a lot longer, but they didn't add new animatronics fast enough. And they immediately made it near unplayable and didn't fix it. To the point where there was a mod that was doing better than the full game. So, I think that's why it died. I've got to check if the mod is still working or not. Because if so, that'll be pretty cool. I'll play it. I'll make a video on it. But currently, I think that the mobile game is just gone forever. Fnaf fun fact. The game right before Scott made Fnaf, there was a game about animatronics in a wood factory. I remember that. With Chip. I think that was the name of the animatronic. There's a little beaver animatronic called Chip. I don't think he was an animatronic. I think he was just a little beaver. But he did later become an animatronic, L-Chip. He did do an animatronic. I can't remember what game it was. But the boss in one of the games, in the final boss, was this animatronic monstrosity thing. I gotta be honest, I don't really remember Scott's previous games well enough. I didn't know about Scott Cawthon before Fnaf, and when Fnaf came out, I did take a brief look at his old games, but I don't remember them well enough. So that might be something cool to do. I might sit down and play some of his old games. That could be quite a bit of fun.
Another Springtrap in the crowd. He wanted to be in the spotlight. Vanessa was confused about him changing his mind, though.
Chipper
They
and
began to
Sons, that was
bicker
it,
about
thank
the
you.
integrity of a unique Springtrap. Getting fed up with this, Vanessa tried banging her head against one of the replicas to attempt a transfer. This ended up knocking her out, giving William free rein to puppet her body. Knowing this could come in handy for future schemes, he quickly searched how to induce compliance in human subjects to ensure he could do this whenever it benefited him. This, alongside some other concerning web searches, alerted the IT department.
Best way to
immediately.
torture, especially that one guy in
Fortunately,
the
the
IT
only guy who cared to
department.
contact Vanessa about it, Lewis, was more interested in coffee than figuring out why she wanted to chop people in half. By the time Vanessa came to, she didn't have any recollection of the stunts William was pulling, and simply resumed her normal work activity. Anytime William took control again, though,
Oh,
Lewis
baby's
would shoot
back.
another email wondering why Vanessa wasn't taking the hint. This led to a lot of one-sided conversation and coffee invitations, but outside of that, the Funtime service was doing great. People
Fake
were renting
coffee fan.
animatronics constantly, and the funds gained from this inspired Michael to start offering additional
I did actually
services
like
and
some of the
quirky variants
variants,
of the
like
existing
Frozen Toy
ones.
Freddy,
There was only
Sister
one
Mera
problem.
Toy Bonnie.
Aside from the occasional
I did
fatalities
actually
and
like
letting
those.
infamously killer animatronics out in public, delivery trucks for both animatronics and pizza started being attacked by bears.
I need to
To
check
Michael's
if there's
surprise,
Funko Pops
bears
of those
absolutely
characters, because
adored
if there
the
is, I'll
taste of
probably
pizza
get them.
and despised Fazbear animatronics. This was all thanks to their overlord, Ferdinand von Bernard. Although artificial, Ferdinand's cosmic power allowed him to integrate perfectly into bear society. His
No, the
appearance
DLC
indicated to bears
characters,
across the world
that
he
wasn't a
something
mod. That
special
was
for
just
their
like,
kind, and he provided them all with
like
a
during
place that was far
Christmas,
beyond
you'd get Frozen Freddy. During July 4th, you could get Statue of Liberty Chica, stuff like that. That wasn't mods. That was just event stuff, just like Valentine's Baby.
their years. The most important thing Ferdinand taught them, however, was to hold a grudge against Fazbear Entertainment. Being left behind and
important to
replaced
know.
by his creators was one thing, but his arch nemesis, Michael, becoming CEO of the company was another. Michael was losing at least 5 delivery drivers a day from these bear attacks, and paying off the lawsuits from this was the final straw. So he met with Vanessa in private and brought up her previous security breach on the Fazbear Funtime service. She was immediately terrified that she'd get fired, but on the contrary, Michael explained that he needed her to covertly program an order for war. After further instruction, Vanessa hacked into the Funtime service yet again to order
Fun
the
fact
animatronics
2,
to
Help
attack.
Wanted FNAF revealed that everything we're learning right now was a myth. Yeah, I don't believe that. It's like dream theory. It's like when you watch a 2-hour-long movie, and then at the end, it was just a dream, and you've just wasted 2 hours and none of it mattered. It's just shit. It's just a shit concept. And the idea that everything didn't actually happen, I kind of just ignore the intro, because it makes the timeline messy. It makes the story unpleasing. The thing is, it gains nothing, and by ignoring it, you lose nothing. You can still make a pretty good and pretty accurate understanding of the lore by ignoring that intro. And there's even people who modded the game so that you can't get the intro. Fun fact, actually, on pirated copies of the game, you can't get the intro. And it's just because it makes it so much more confusing, and it's so unnecessary. I like the fact that you get this silly little intro, because it kind of like teases fun at Scott Cawthon in like a respectful way, and I liked that. It was a little bit funny, but taking it seriously, trying to put it into the lore, I would rather try and take my phone and swallow it. And if those are my two options for what to do after this, I'm gonna swallow my phone. But with the hard case on, it just makes it really confusing. So, although yes, it's in the game and yes, I'm aware of it, I choose to ignore it because it's the only way to keep things from getting too confusing.
Attack all of bear kind. With just a push of a button, the Great Bear War began. Animatronic and Ursine fiercely clashed against each other within moments.
It's
Bears
Aztec
of
Springtrap!
Stormed to the front lines wherever they could, and soon 2 allies arrived.
Who gave them
It
military
was Trevor the
hats?
cashier and Harold the janitor, otherwise known as Shadow Freddy and Rick
They're
Boss.
back!
Both of them had just been fired from their former jobs at Freddy's, and Michael had completely gutted their pension. Rick Fitzbosks tortured one patron for cheating at Pack and Pal, and that managed to cross the line, apparently. Shadow Freddy didn't want to work at Freddy's without his partner, so Mike fired him too just so he couldn't formally quit. With nothing to lose, Shadow Freddy and Rick Fitzbosks tried to assist the war effort to rebel against
Don't
Michael.
beat up
Sadly,
that
as Shadow
Springtrap
Freddy attempted to
version.
conga-line a troop of bears to victory, he was obliterated by a barrage of fireworks. As Shadow Freddy's dark remnant scattered across Hurricane, Rick Fitzbosks' rage grew so powerful that he managed
pronounced
to shut
it right.
down the Funtime Services servers and end the bloodshed. This was too little too late, sadly, and he set off on a hopeless quest to
It looks
restore
like all
his
the bears are
partner and
already
bring him
dead.
back. Ferdinand, discovering Mike had nearly obliterated his people, knew he had to do something to fix this. After phasing through
They obliterated
realities to
themselves,
forge the
bruh.
perfect plan, Ferdinand understood what needed to be done. For safekeeping, Ferdinand warped all bears across time and space to a new dimension he called Paradise, and waited for the stars to align in his favor. Now that bears were seemingly extinct, Michael had no real threat to his business. Additionally, his overall corporate success caught the attention of every major company in the country. The power vacuum they all shared from Eleanor's massacre allowed for Mike to buy all of them out for cheap, and Fazbear Entertainment became a mega corporation within the blink of an eye. With this, the stage was finally set for Michael to build the mega pizzaplex of his dreams, and Hurricane City Council couldn't say no this time. Michael was proud of Vanessa for her cooperation, and despite her not really being qualified for any promotion, he ordered his board of directors to transfer her to the head of security at the pizzaplex once construction was complete. It would take time for this project to finish, but Michael was absolutely certain that it'd be nothing short of his magnum opus. For now, he was left to contemplate his 2 personal
Well, as
projects.
useful. I was typing a
Dreadbear had
message
been
to
a
someone
great
and my
novelty
phone's
for the
just
Fall
died.
Fest, but his
Love
body's
that.
disrepair was not sustainable for a long-term business. So, Mike harvested Dreadbear's AI to use with a
Fuck.
brand new animatronic.
That's a
Glamrock
pretty important
reimagining
message.
Freddy
Fuck.
Dreadbear. All Mike needed now was to finally use his Fazgoo for its true purpose.
Stream's
With
not going great for
confirmation
me.
from shady science teachers across the country that the substance worked, Mike was confident his most unattainable dream would come to fruition. Now,
Why is it
exploring every
turning
nook and
back on?
cranny of Hurricane, he searched for the remnant he had coughed up after the pizza place fire in order to bring his younger
You have
brother back.
0%.
Soon after
You can't turn on with
vaporizing
-1.
flashlight, Michael finally found what he was looking for.
Oh, I
The
found
chaotic
remnant.
energy emanated from the newest remnant deposit he discovered, and he knew he found him. Capturing the remnant, returning home, Michael guided the child's soul to the Fazgoo and watched as the boy was
Miraculously, my
finally
phone
put
is
back
on with
together.
0%
Now that his
charge.
brother
I don't know
actually
how.
existed again, the fog lifted. After all this time, Michael could finally
We're just not going to
remember
question
the
it. My
child's
phone
name.
is just more powerful.
Gregory Afton.
I don't know how.
I hope that suffices for now. The finale's rolling in much faster than this one, and I've got to be prepared.
Wait, finale? Has security reached the end?
Yep, nothing else. No secret up my sleeve. It all ends with... you'll see. Catch you next time.
I mean, Security Breach was the bit I was excited to see, and that's the bit that you didn't deliver, so... I'll admit, I feel a little bit cheated. But other than that, that was another really good episode. I like that. I gotta be honest, I think that's the weakest out of the 3. Just because it focused on things that weren't so interesting to me. It focused a lot on the books, it focused a lot on the mobile game, it focused a lot on the Into the Pit game. I'll put a message in. We're not leaving until part 4. Oh god, we're gonna be here for years. Davey charges his phones on stream finally. Yep. I'm finally charging my phone, guys. It's something I never do, I know. Yeah. I think this is the weakest episode of the 3. But I definitely still think that it's good. I'm not gonna sit around with this 1,946 people. We ain't doing that. I'm gonna go to webcam for a minute. It says 2 things I want to show off. The first thing I want to show off. Uh-oh. I made a Springlock suit. Has anyone heard from this guy recently? Is he okay? I want to find the guy who does the theories that I was talking about, because I don't want to drag the stream too much longer from now. But I do want to quickly go onto one of his theories and just show you guys his channel, because I think he's going to be the next MacPat. And then I got to try and find his Fnaf theory now. Jesus Christ, I can't remember what his channel's called. Alright, well, while I'm looking for him, terminal error. Alright, I found him. And the other thing that I'm going to do, once I've shown this guy off, is I'm going to really quickly open up Into the Pit. And I'm going to see if I've been an idiot this whole time and what I was supposed to do was jump back into the ball pit. Because if that's what I was supposed to do, I'm going to be so mad. Another one, you spoil us. I do. We're watching a lot of FNAF stuff tonight. Fun fact 3. Foxy is always last in the info or options page. And also, he's also not on the main stage, which suggests that he was worked on last. Yeah, I mean, I prefer the idea that just neither of them liked Foxy, so just stuffed him in the corner. But yeah, it makes sense that since he wasn't placed on the stage, he was given his own separate place, and he doesn't appear on any of the menu screens. It's clearly suggesting there's some kind of importance to him, which suggests he could have been the last one made. Yeah, I definitely agree. There's a lot of sense to that theory, but I do just like the idea that, you know, they took this guy, didn't like him, threw him in the corner and just went on with their lives. Terminal error. This is someone quite interesting. I've only watched a couple of his theories. I want to give him a proper video to watch his stuff and pitch it to you guys. But the ones I've watched... First of all, I've watched Why Phone Guy's Death Matters. He basically talks about that storybook and talks about Phone Guy's real name and all of that stuff. Is Glitch Trap gone for good? That basically just talks about a bunch of interviews with Steelwall, the ending of Help Wanted 2 and all of that stuff. And... okay, this is quite an interesting one. Why does Golden Freddy's hat change colour? That's an interesting one, which I haven't seen. Admittedly, that does sound quite entertaining. Thank you so much for always reading my fun facts, bro. Of course, of course. Alright, what do you want, guys? What do you want? Do you want to uncover Bonnie's killer? Or do you want to see why Golden Freddy's hat changes colour? Or do we do both? What do you guys think? What do you guys think? You know, I'm going to let you guys think about what episode we're going to do. And I'm going to really quickly fire up Into the Pit. Just because I want to see if that's what I was meant to do. And if that's what I was meant to do, I'm going to be absolutely butthurt. Oh, I have to reinstall it. No!